Good morning. It's May 10th, 2016, and I will call the Wright County Board meeting to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The minutes of May 3rd, 2016.
Mr. Chair, I will move the minutes from last week, May 3rd.
I will second those.
Motion by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Potter. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Today's agenda. Any additions or corrections to the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Delyden, second by Commissioner Burrell to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. The consent agenda. Anybody have anything to remove for further discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Delyden, second by Commissioner Houston to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. 9:05 a.m., Bob Hevola, Wright County Auditor Treasurer. Good morning, Bob.
Hey, good morning, Board.
Looks like people are interested to hear what you have to say
Yeah,
this morning.
I appreciate that. So we've come across something where we can actually lower costs and improve efficiency, so thank you for showing up today. So, now, Board, I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that we had a chance to upgrade our postage equipment. Now, this is just a inserter piece of equipment, but we're able to replace our inserter with a new model inserter with a folder and acquire a new software program that allows us to save money on certified mail. So, Board, we're going to lower our monthly costs and add an ability for us to track all certified mail that we're sending out and lower our costs. So, since this is under budget, I'm just going to sign the contract with Neopost. We're staying with the same company, just new equipment, more efficiency, and lower costs.
Okay. Any questions for Bob? It looks like it's informational only.
Didn't we do something last year, or the year before, with something with Neopost too?
Commissioners, we did. We got a whole new metering system that allows us to program in all the cost savings. By us doing more bulk work, we lowered our costs for postage. So that was a more expensive solution, but we did save money, so.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. And here's the signed claims. 9:08 a.m., Virgil Hawkins, Wright County Highway Engineer. Good morning, Virgil.
Good morning, Chairman and Board of Commissioners. It's nice to see the interest this morning in distribution of the annual report. And that's one of the 4 items I have today for your consideration, the distribution of the 2015 Annual Highway Department Report. They'll just be distributed today for your review and comment, and then we'll come back next week to review the report. With that, I'll go ahead and hand these out.
Virgil, if a member of the public wanted to see one of these, how would they do that?
Suppose we could put it online.
Okay. Or else, yeah, if that's easy enough, or else you could ask your local county commissioner to borrow theirs perhaps, but if folks want to see one, contact Virgil and we'll make sure you get one.
Well, I would think putting it online would be a great way to do it.
So you're going to do that then, Virgil? You'll make it available?
Do that right now before it's approved, or
No, after it's approved.
after it's approved?
You already have an electronic version, so it'll be easy for you to do that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So it will be available on our website if folks want to see it. Okay, item 2.
Item 2 for your consideration is to award the pavement preservation contract that we opened bids on April 29th. And I did notice this morning as I was going through the agenda items, there was a second page missing in your handouts. And I'll distribute that now. This item. Summary bids. The abstract of the totals.
Yeah, there's a second page.
And as you remember, the board directed us to take bids on these 3 additional projects because our original pavement preservation bids came in so good this year. We had some good bids. The low bid on this one was Knife River at $654,736, and it's all planned to pay for with local money that we saved from the original bid. The engineer's estimate was $720,989. So we're recommending award of the contract to Knife River Corporation.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Delyden.
The other bids, that was Nice River also?
Correct.
And again, these were for which additional ones we're going to do?
This round of contract was County Road 116, County Road 147, and CASA 42 in Otsego.
And those projects were prior to, now they were in the 2017?
One was, and I think 2 had been deleted before from prior years that we didn't have funding for.
But as of since they weren't in the 16, that would have rolled them to 17.
Correct.
The original.
Or future.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to award the bid to Knife River in the amount of $654,736.99.
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Delyden. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. The next item is a resolution of final acceptance for a project. This project was Southside Township Bridge, paid for with Town Bridge Projects funding, and we're recommending final payment in the amount of $23,000 for structural specialties. The total amount certified for this project was $465,369.05.
Mr. Chair, I will move approval of the final payment.
Second by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Potter. Any further discussion? So this here is on is our resolution here then?
Yes.
Okay. Roll call vote. Commissioner Burrell?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution carries unanimous.
Thank you. The last item this morning for consideration is also to approve a resolution for final acceptance of the 2015 pavement preservation contract, authorizing final payment of $211,000, $358.33 to Knife River.
I'll make a motion to approve the final payment to Knife River.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Delyden, second by Commissioner Burrell. Any further discussion? Not all. Our roll call vote. Commissioner Burrell?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution carries unanimous.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Virgil. Mike McMillan, Court Services Director. Good morning, Mike.
Morning.
How is everyone this morning?
Oh, great.
Great. Commissioners and Chairman Swatsky, you've seen the board agenda, and on the board agenda today, we want to make a presentation, a brief presentation about a new initiative that has been put together by the key players in the criminal justice system and led by Judge Michelle Davis, who's sitting to my left, and she'll speak as well and maybe even make some introductions. As you know, over the course of time, we've taken restorative justice extremely seriously in operation of our department in the criminal justice system in Wright County. And the courts and our department and a number of other departments came together approximately 3 months ago and took a look at potentially putting into place a drug court in operation in Wright County. My frame of reference for you, just kind of to draw some parallels, is we have a domestic abuse ISP agent, we have a DWI ISP agent, so we put some extra energy and resources into supervising high-risk offenders in a certain way. And another model around the country that's growing fast, and I'll give you some statistics on that, is drug courts. So taking a look at high-risk drug offenders who are they shouldn't go to prison just based on their offense, but they clearly have drug issues, and how do you deal with those more appropriately in the system? So the goal of drug court and the goal of the group in the criminal justice system putting this together was to apply for a federal grant, which has been applied for through the Bureau of Justice. Not through our department, but actually through the Supreme Court, the 10th Judicial District. Although all of us will be players in that, including our department, that would coordinate and provide the supervision of those felony offenders. So drug court, really, the idea is to reduce reincarceration instead of creating more tax and trying to produce more tax-paying, productive citizens in our community, which has been our goal with restorative justice the whole time. It also saves lives, saves money, and hopefully reduces crime in our community. At least that's what the statistics have bared out, not only in Minnesota, but nationwide. And the key players that I talked about that are vital to making this happen and working in unison and creating a safety net and an opportunity for them to be successful, and that actually participated in the training that Judge Davis facilitated. She didn't facilitate, but she led, pulled the group together to go to the training by the Bureau of Justice. We'll include our department, of course, Wright County Sheriff's Department, Wright County Attorney's Office, the Public Defender's Office, Central Minnesota Mental Health, and Wright County Human Services. And all are very, very important to the success of the program. Currently, Central Minnesota also operates our jail treatment program, so there's some congruency with them already dealing with that level of offender in our Wright County Jail. Who's eligible for drug court? It's real simple who's going to be eligible. The nonviolent, gross misdemeanor, or felon. That's real key. The key for you is nonviolent. Those individuals who have multiple drug offenses, they would fall into a high-risk category because of their addiction, not because of their violent behavior, but their nonviolent behavior. One of the sheets that I gave you today is kind of a little handout that's recently been published, and Judge just gave it to me the other day. Speaks on the criminal justice system as a state coming together to take a look at how we're dealing with those nonviolent drug offenders and try to take a little different look at our system top to bottom in the state of Minnesota. And it's a pretty interesting piece, and it's pretty easy to read. So if you get some time, take a look at that. But you'll see there's clearly a shift to spend more resources, especially prison dollars, on those offenders that really need to be in prison, and then keep the other ones out of prison on probation, which is, as you guys know, is much, much cheaper than incarceration. The individuals have to be at least 18 years of age. They'll be Wright County residents. And again, high risk, that'll be identified by our department in a screening process to start them through the drug court. We'll actually, unlike some counties, we'll actually start the screening process at arrest. So because we do the bail studies for the court now, at the time of arrest and the initial stage of incarceration, we'll be doing that process will start earlier than some, where some drug courts don't start until they make their first court appearance, but we'll actually jump on that a little bit sooner. The traditional response has been send those offenders to a lengthy prison sentence, send them to a longer jail sentence, and then they're placed back on probation after they serve that time. We're going to actually flip that model and start that process earlier on probation and try to keep them out of prison in long-term jail sentences. Drug courts, currently there's 2,966 drug courts in the U.S. Hopefully there'll be 2,967 beginning October 1st upon receival of a federal grant. 150,000 people are served by drug courts each year, and 1.4 million drug court graduates have graduated so far from drug courts nationally. Why does Wright County need a drug court? Our numbers kind of bear out, and in the big packet of information, I'm actually doing a real summary, but in the big packet of information, you'll find all these numbers. But in 2014, there were 316 arrests for drug offenses in Wright County. 173 of those resulted in criminal complaint being filed. 91 of those offenders were sentenced for felony controlled substance crimes, and 26 went to prison. So that's some, maybe it's the numbers you knew, maybe the numbers you didn't know, but they're significant. And, you know, over time, because of the length of prison terms, jail terms, and length of felony probation, those numbers add up to the number of the offenders that are being a tax on our system. So clearly there's a high cost. Jails, the cost is $104 a day to be housed in Wright County Jail. In 2015, the average daily population was 166 inmates, $17,264 per day. So those are pretty high numbers, and those are in that packet as well. And probation, though, $1,256 per year covers an offender on felony probation. So significantly lower if we provide the right level of supervision. Felony probation can go anywhere from 5 to 40 years, and the cost per offender is $6,200 per year for offender. How will the drug court help? It'll provide intensive supervision, and at a higher level even than our current ISP program. It'll coordinate comprehensive treatment, so everything will be coordinated and be led by the court. Facilitate collaborative chemical health and ancillary services throughout all the community providers. Access to mental health services, hopefully in a greater way than we do today because of that upfront collaboration. And increased judicial intervention and accountability, which is a real key piece of the success of drug court. So the program, I think I've touched on some of them, but I'll just repeat them because it's really, really important. I think it's the crux of kind of how we have operated in Wright County, if it be safe schools, if it be our community interaction, if it be our networking, all those things that we do collaboratively. The program includes, and you can just tell by this list of the collaborative nature of supervision of these offenders, will be a chemical dependency program, mental health interventions again, which is extremely important. Matter of fact, maybe it should be listed number 1. As you know, it's a huge crisis right now in our criminal justice system. Random alcohol and drug testing, regular court appearances, case management meetings, community support groups, assistance in obtaining employment, pursuing education and community services, and participation in pro-social activities, clearly trying to change the behavior of those offenders who are addicts and do not need to be in the prison system. Upon graduation, the participant will appear in front of a judge a minimum of 25 times, have a minimum of 35 office visits with a probation officer. I'll guarantee you that will be higher. We'll have home visits from PO and law enforcement, complete 16 weeks of treatment, and completed 156 plus drug tests while they're on supervision. The program will cost approximately $3,000 per participant. It will limit the use of jail sanctions. It'll help offenders gain employment. It'll give the offenders tools, hopefully to gain long-term sobriety and some stability and a safety net to achieve that. The partners are really excited about the opportunity, real excited about coming together to apply for the federal grant. And I think that the judge has done an unbelievable job of pulling all the players together and really driving this train in a very, very fast, short period of time. Representative O'Neill is here as well, and I'm sure you've heard her speak. She's spoken publicly on drug courts and pushed the initiative at the state level. There's a state grant that will be applied for as well. The judge is actually working on today, but we had to submit the federal grant before that time. So we may actually come back to you at some point for more discussion if a resolution is needed on the state grant. That would be for $50,000 a year. The federal grant's for about $100,000 to offset some of the costs, ancillary costs that would come about because of it. So that's a kind of a mile-high view of it. I did want to call Judge Davis up to say a few words. She said 30 seconds, but I don't think she can pull it off in 30 seconds, but we'll give her a little bit more time.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, Chairman and Commissioner Board members. Thank you for those kind words, Mike. We have been working hard to get our drug court together and apply for those federal funds as well as state funds in a relatively short period of time. At first glance, it's not an easy thing to wrap your brain around, and it is a complete 180 in the way law enforcement people generally think. However, once you hear the facts, once you see the research, and once you understand the program and the nature of it, it's an easy thing to get behind. As Mike mentioned, across our nation, our justice partners have recognized that locking up these individuals for lengthy prison sentences and long jail periods isn't working. for nonviolent addicted offenders who are likely to reoffend, Wright County Adult Drug Court is an effort by all of our justice partners to collaborate to provide comprehensive services in an effort to change lives, prevent crime, and reduce costs. Unlike traditional probation, this is a recognition by our justice partners that these addictive behaviors can be changed with intensive supervision, increased judicial involvement, participant accountability, and comprehensive coordinated services by all of our justice partners. Research has shown that drug courts are successful, and they've been around for many, many years, and they are successful in reducing recidivism, reducing costs, and producing taxpaying citizens. As Mike mentioned, over 150,000 people are served by drug courts across the nation each year, and 75% of drug court graduates never reoffend. And that's compared to 30% of offenders who are sent to prison and come out of prison. Only 30% of offenders who get out of prison don't reoffend. 75% of drug court participants never reoffend. So far, as Mike mentioned, there's been 1.4 million graduates from drug court. The U.S. Department of Justice recently identified an additional 1.2 million people that could be served and are eligible for drug court but don't have access to one. So that's why we came together as a group. And when I say we, I mean it's a big we. We have all of our justice partners who have come together and signed a memorandum of understanding outlining their responsibilities and their commitment to this drug court. And some of our participants include Wright County Human Services, Wright County Court Services, obviously, the County Attorney's Office, the Public Defender's Office, the Sheriff's Department, Court Administration. We have a memorandum of understanding if we get funding with Hamlin University to do a comprehensive evaluation of our drug court. We have Central Minnesota Mental Health on board to do our treatment services for us. So it is a comprehensive, collaborated effort. And all of these partners have got behind it and have agreed to participate in it and give us their services so that we can be successful. Mike mentioned, the amount of time a participant would appear in front of a judge 25 times at a minimum. He mentioned the number of office visits that they would have, the number of home visits that they would have, 156 drug tests. Now remember, this is within a period of 14 to 24 months at the maximum. So that's a short period of time to have that intensive supervision. Traditionally, probation on these offenders lasts 5 years, and I can guarantee you they don't have 156 drug tests in 5 years. So it is much different than traditional probation, and it does require that intensive supervision. But not only that, it requires the judge's involvement. We meet those team members that I mentioned, Human Services, Central Minnesota Mental Health, the County Attorney, the Public Defender, the Sheriff's Department, Human Services. We meet weekly to discuss our drug court participants. So it is really a comprehensive, coordinated collaboration between these justice partners to get them the services that they need to be successful. And as Mike mentioned, historically, Wright County justice partners have come together on different initiatives and made them successful. And I have no doubt that this endeavor is going to be just as successful. I'm so happy to be a part of it, and mostly I'm grateful to be a part of something that's really going to help a lot of people. So thank you for your time this morning. I hope you're as excited as I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What do you expect 18 months or 2 years from now, what will be the caseload of drug court participants at that time approximately?
We've anticipated that we have the capability to serve 25 participants at any given time. The drug court program lasts a minimum of 14 months, average 18 months. On the outside, it'd probably be 24 months. There's 5 phases to drug court. The first phase is kind of just bring them in, get them orientated to court and to treatment. That lasts 60 days. The remaining 4 phases last 90 days at a minimum each.
Then, is the criteria for participation in drug court going to be black and white? Or, so in other words, if you meet this criteria, you can do it. If you don't, you can't? Or is there going to be some subjectivity to the attitude of this person and the likelihood that they will succeed or not succeed based upon other circumstances?
That's a very good question. The criteria is black and white. The initial criteria is you're 18 years old and you're a resident of Wright County. The second piece of it is you're charged with a non-violent felony or gross misdemeanor offense. So you can't have a firearm and it can't be a violent offense. The third piece of it is you're identified as high risk to reoffend and high needs for treatment. You've failed out of treatment, you've failed probation in the past. So it's high risk, high needs individuals that are going to participate, and it's voluntary. So they are told right when they come in at arrest, their first appearance, hey, initially you look eligible. This is what drug court is. The public defender's office, we have a representative here today, retired Mr. Forrest Larson is going to be helping us in our drug court. The public defender will tell them at their first appearance, this is what drug court is, this is the pros and cons. If you succeed in drug court, your charge will be either reduced from a felony to a misdemeanor, you'll receive no jail time, or you won't go to prison. Those are the pros of participating in drug court, and they decide. But yes, it's black and white.
Okay, this press release here, it talks about on the first page about distinguishing between nonviolent drug offenders who are motivated by addiction and distinguishing between them and dangerous offenders motivated by greed. Now, I presume the greed is indication of people selling drugs.
True. But
So, one is addiction, the other is greed. So does that mean any drug dealer is not eligible for this? Or are we gonna have a deal where, oh, this guy's only selling this amount of drugs, so he's eligible?
it doesn't necessarily mean that sellers will not be eligible for drug court, but if they're simply selling out of greed to make money and they're not addicted, they're not going to be identified as high needs, so they won't be allowed into drug court.
So if it's not for greed, what is it? Because they want to be friends with their friends and help them out by selling them drugs?
No, they're selling drugs to support their own habit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other
Fair
questions?
judge, I mean, everyone
If you're
who's
selling, that
involved.
would be the greed component, but okay. Chris?
I was just going to say, thank you so much. I know this has been a lot of work, and the statistics and everything, I've been following this for a while, are so encouraging. And what jumped out at me so much is that 75% of drug court graduates don't reoffend, whereas 30% of prisoners who have not gone through the program do so. I mean, that's pretty staggering. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and let me just say thank you for all of our team members that are present here today. We have Human Services, the Sheriff's Department, Central Minnesota Mental Health, obviously Court Services, the county attorneys here. We have court administration here and the Public Defender's Office, so.
I have another question here.
Sure.
I'm not sure, Charlie looks anxious too, so you might have one. But I think you mentioned a memorandum of understanding. That must be something with the state that if you,
Nope, it's a memorandum of understanding between all of our core team members. So it's with court administration, the Sheriff's Department, Central Minnesota Mental Health, Human Services, the county attorney, the Public Defender's Office, Court Services. I don't know if I've missed anybody.
so there must be some criteria from the state to be able to, because the state has minimum sentences, and that's what you talked about trying to get around and avoid. Does the state have some criteria that if you meet X, Y, and Z, then you can do a drug court and you can have sentences different than these sentences? Or how is it based in statute that provides for this?
Well,
And who makes the choice? Who has the ability to? Every one of these groups that you mentioned, do they have to sign on to this, or who has the authority? Because you're not asking Wright County to approve this. We're here for information today, so
Right.
who has the authority to enact drug court?
You can, if you get a group of people together, there's no necessary authority to enact a drug court, but in order to get state court funding from the judicial branch, you have to be, I can't remember if they call it certified, recognized, or what they call it, but like a recognized drug court, and there are certain standards that you have to meet in order to be recognized as a certified state drug court. And there's also federal best practices and federal standards. In order to get federal funding, you have to be recognized to implement those standards and those fundings. But we don't have to have any statutory authority to implement a drug court. As far as the sentencings go, if it is a commit to prison under the sentencing guidelines or a mandatory minimum jail sentence under the guidelines, the judge always has the discretion to depart from those guidelines as long as we have sufficient reasons to do so. So
So you'd be doing that under this realm, then, under the realm you just mentioned?
we would in some instances, but the Sentencing Guidelines Commission is also reorganizing their sentencing criteria, and so some of these higher level offenders who would otherwise go to prison, when the new sentencing guidelines come out in August, it won't be an automatic prison sentence, so we won't have to depart necessarily on those. Sorry if I'm not answering the question.
Oh, that's okay, yep. Charlie?
Oh, I was just saying, I attended a presentation by Stearns County. They have a drug court up there. And at the end of it, I told
I said, I've seen more people's lives ruined by alcohol than I have by drugs. That's just me personally. And I said, you know, why are we allowing alcohol? I said, why don't we make that illegal and treat it like any other drug? And the whole place just about fell over, you know. And then an elderly guy next to me, he said, oh, Charlie, says, you don't understand. We tried that back in the 30s, you know. And he said, and I said, well, what happened? He says, oh, the organized crime got in there, the mafia and all this stuff. And I said, oh, kind of like the drug cartels now? And he's like, oh, yeah, you know. It's just, can't you just get the people that are on drugs to just switch over to alcohol? It's legal.
I don't have any comment
They're
on
just
that.
choosing the wrong drug. Just choosing the wrong drugs.
Our goal is to get them off every chemical.
Okay. Did anybody else have anything from your group to present?
No, I don't believe so.
Any other questions from here? Okay. And then just could you, one final question, of all these drug courts that have been created around the country, I think it's 1,200 and some or something, I think maybe I saw.
1,796, I
Okay.
think.
How many times has a drug court been created in a jurisdiction and later they've deemed it to be problems and not successful and stopped doing drug court? I'm assuming that's happened at least once or twice or a few times, but probably not very many, but do you know the
I
answer
can't
to
tell
that?
you how many times, but I can tell you the most prevalent reason that drug courts disband is sustainability. They don't have the funds to continue sustaining their drug court because it does cost money. It is intensive. It's like we mentioned, many more drug tests than typical, many more office visits, home visits, many more court appearances. So the number one reason for drug courts failing is their sustainability. Number two is not having the support of your justice partners, which is absolutely neither one of those right now are a problem for Wright County. We definitely have the support of all of our justice partners, and most of them are volunteering employees to participate in drug court without getting paid.
But just first but the information suggests that for every dollar spent, $3.36 is saved. So if in fact that's true, they couldn't stop doing it because then they would have so much more money they'd have to spend to stop doing it.
I think it's because the money comes from different silos. So it's saving prison money, but the prison population or the prison funds aren't necessarily going to go into the drug court. So you really have to have the cooperation of those agencies so that you can recognize those cost savings across the board. And that's some of what the packet of information that Mike gave you from the Minnesota County Attorneys Association believes that they'll be able to shift the funds from the prison system into the courts. I don't know how.
I was just gonna say the same thing,
Okay.
that there's a cost savings. So I can understand the silo effect that.
There's
Yeah, it's not their money.
there's
Somebody
definitely a
doesn't wanna help.
cost savings to our taxpayers. There's absolutely a cost savings to our taxpayers, but it does take a lot of resources from all of our justice partners to sustain it, so
We just need to transfer from one silo to the other.
I think so.
Yeah.
We need to do something that makes sense.
And this does.
Sometimes that's kinda
I hope you agree. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the
Thank you.
presentation.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, I don't know if we want to, why don't we take just a 3-4 minute recess and see if we can't get a few more chairs, let people set some more chairs up that aren't, and if anybody else has something to set up.
People are
and-
vacating, so.
Oh, those that are vacating can vacate. I guess there'll probably be some room here. Some people are vacating the room here. Yeah, we're going to take just 3-4 minutes here real quick. Everybody's ready up here?
Mr. Makeup.
See, we'll call the meeting back into session. At this time, on the agenda, we have the public hearing resolution for moratorium on solar farms. Sean Riley or Greg Kreiser, one of you two going to lead off here?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, County Board. Good thing we dressed up today. This item was acted on 3 weeks ago with an emergency moratorium on solar farms. We did notification for a public hearing being held today at 9:30 a.m. In response to that notification, we received some input. The first two items in your packet, Exhibit 1 from Wright Hennepin, and then the second exhibit from Rob Davis, Director of Fresh Energy, they came in time to get in your packet, so you have those. The remainder came over the weekend. Varied responses from citizens in the state about the moratorium. So what's scheduled today, Mr. Greg Kreiser put together the moratorium for a maximum of 1 year in the language, and that's what's to be acted on today.
Sorry, you want to repeat that last sentence, Sean?
That's what's to be acted on today, the moratorium that's in your packet.
Okay. Was Greg going to add anything before we got into the public hearing here component? Just want to be more specific on what the moratorium would do and what we would do in the process and all that sort of thing relative to.
Will do. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The moratorium resolution that you have before you is it has minor tweaks from the one you approved 3 weeks ago. It incorporates that we're having a public hearing today and that this would be extended for up to 12 months. One point of clarification I do want to make in the resolution that you have, this applies to solar energy farms. It does not apply to solar energy systems. So solar energy systems would still be allowed to move forward.
Okay, can you define each of them
The
for us right now?
the systems are the household solar panels that you'd see on top of a barn, top of your house, for residential small ag uses. I believe on an ag use associated with a farm, it couldn't be more than 100 kilowatts.
Okay.
I believe. It's a much smaller unit. We're talking about a few solar panels on a roof or on a pole closely attached to a residential property. So those would still go forward. We haven't had any applications I'm not aware of on those at this point in time. So
Okay, do those even require a conditional use permit or?
some of them do. It
Okay.
depends on the size.
Okay. Commissioner Burrell?
Greg, thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you be able to exclude the townships? We have several townships that do their own planning and zoning, and let them, if they wanted to act on a moratorium, or would it be countywide?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Burrell, it would be countywide. Townships that do their own planning and zoning need to be as restrictive or more restrictive than the county. So if the moratorium gets voted down, they can institute their own moratorium, because that would be more restrictive.
And what about the cities?
Cities
have
have their
no
own planning and
control
zoning.
impact on
This
that.
doesn't apply to cities.
Does this apply to the MOAA area or the Clearwater OAA area?
Mr. Chair, the MOAA, Monticello Orderly Annexation Area, for those members of the community here who aren't familiar with that acronym, has determined through their joint powers agreement that they have their own ordinance capability. The city of Monticello, when Wright County designated, then they have their own ordinance capability. So they set their own zoning ordinance within their orderly annexation area. So that board would determine whether or not solar panels and to what extent they would be allowed there. So far they have not adopted, to my understanding, a solar ordinance, so solar panels would not be allowed in the orderly annexation area, at least in Monticello. Clearwater, I'm not sure if they had the same enabling language dealing with ordinances, so I think the county ordinance would apply, or this moratorium would apply in Clearwater.
Yeah, Monticello Orderly Annexation Area is meeting tomorrow to discuss the solar issue as well, so, okay. I thought that was gonna be the answer, I just wanted to verify that here, so.
Yep.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, Middleville also does their planning and zoning, correct?
Sure,
Yep.
along with
Stockholm.
Stockholm and Corinna.
Corinna.
Yep. Okay, anything else for Mr. Kreiser? If not, at this time, then we'll open the public hearing on the proposed solar moratorium. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand, and I will come on up, sir. When you do come up to speak, if you could give us your name, and maybe if you're with a certain company, we'd like to know that, or if you live in a certain township, or, you know, something just kind of more than your name, but where you're from or what your interest is. And if you come up and speak a second time, many of us up here know who you are, but there's a lot of people in the room, and perhaps the secretary does or doesn't know, so, but just because there's a lot of folks here, if you do come up and speak a second time, if you can make sure to give your name again the second time, we would appreciate that. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, my name's Evan Carlson. I work for Innovative Power Systems. We're a solar power company from St. Paul, and we are doing community solar garden projects here in the county. And before this all gets started, I wanted to try and keep the conversation on topic, and that topic is the moratorium on your solar ordinance, which affects community solar gardens. You're going to hear a lot of information about projects that are irrelevant. They aren't going to have anything to do with the community solar ordinance or this board's ability to approve or deny the project. And the reason for that is that it's a very good solar ordinance. When you created it, you gathered public input, you thought about it very hard, you made it into law, and companies like us relied upon it. And it is working. It's a great ordinance that allows for projects to be approved or denied on a project-by-project basis based on the input provided at the township level and then again at the county level. So if there's a bad project, somebody opposes it for whatever reason, whether it's tree clearing or anything else, they can go to the township hearing, they can go to the county hearing, they can oppose the project, and if it's a bad project, I'm willing to bet you won't approve it. But it'll allow an opportunity for the good projects to get through, and that's just it. We've got a lot of really great projects that we won't even get to show you unless this moratorium is lifted. We've got one where Annandale School District will save about over $1 million, but it's in a good site, but you won't get to see it unless this moratorium is lifted. So when people come up here and say, you know, I heard this happened there, or I heard this happened there, keep asking yourself, does this have to do with our solar ordinance and this moratorium? And most of the time it won't. And that's because your solar ordinance is working. And the second thing I wanted to bring up is the actual facts about how many of these gardens there are. I keep hearing words like flurry and frenzy, and that is not true. I sent an email to Sean Riley on Friday. He got back to me and told me that there have been 4 community solar gardens approved in the county. 4 is not a frenzy or a flurry. It's just only 4 projects. That's normal permitting procedure. And of those 4 projects, 2 of them were utilities. So that really represents only 2 projects by private companies like us, a Minnesota company. Those 2 gardens represent about 60 acres of land. It's about 1 farm. That's not a whole lot of development. So when people come up here and they tell you about tree clearing or things like that, that didn't get in front of the township. That didn't get in front of you. And if it had, it probably wouldn't get approved. And the community solar ordinance and the moratorium is on those good projects that you will get an opportunity to scrutinize and approve or deny on a project-by-project basis. And another thing about these gardens is that these are the projects where people actually reap the benefit of the garden. Subscribers get a discount in their power bill, and subscribers like the Annandale School District. And they're great projects. And I want to keep it on topic and within these parameters, and that's what I've got for now. But another important part is that they're temporary land uses. After the garden is decommissioned, it is removed from the ground, and the ground is farmable once again. And there is information to support that. We can provide you with that if you want. We're always open to providing you additional information and giving you new resources about how to research this further, but we've got projects that we just want our opportunity to be heard and seen, and they're in townships that we think will approve them. So that's where I wanted to start it. I just wanted to frame it in that box.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Chris?
I have a question for Evan. When you mentioned that there'll be $1 million in savings, are you talking to the Annandale School District, and how does that play out? I mean, $1 million is
Yeah.
huge savings.
They save over the lifetime of the project on their power bill through a discounted rate. They're a subscriber of ours, and we're trying to build that garden, but we need to be able to apply for a permit in order to do it. And again, 4 permits only. That's all that's been issued, is 4 permits. There are a couple more in the pipeline, but it is nowhere, this sensationalization of it it's absurd. There are only a handful of applications, and they're good projects, and if they're not good, you can turn them down.
Do you have a question, Charlie? Or
I just wanted to comment a little bit on, because I do sit on the Planning and Zoning Board, and we were told a lot of times, just like what you said, we'll pull the poles out and we'll go right back to farming. Now, I believe that's true with most of the solar companies, but we do have some that are going in and moving a lot of dirt, leveling things out, and that is not going to be prime farmland anymore after that. So it's kind of a learning curve for us on the Planning and Zoning Board that we'll have to just make sure that that doesn't happen. The other thing, the gravel roads, I was not concerned about the decommissioning before, because these panels in 25 years will still work. They'll be less efficient than they are now. I mean, people will be using them at their cabin. I mean, there's a market, a secondary market for them. But so I was not so concerned with a bond to remove them. But with the roads, a lot of the times they're putting these gravel access roads in, and that's something that we will have to bond for. I mean, and I don't think we've really addressed that adequately at Planning and Zoning. We will now. The other thing, with water drainage, we have talked about this to make sure that they map the tile system, and if they're not going to do that, that they actually replace with new tile so that they do not hit the tiles when they drain down, because they could inadvertently create a wetland that would not be able to go back to farmland again after 25 years, because we all know if it's in a wetland for 25 years, it's kind of becomes a permanent wetland.
Right.
So those are some of the issues that I said that it's been a learning curve for us on Planning and Zoning on some of those issues, and the thing that we get a lot of bad taste from, and it was from the Aurora project that we had no control over, well, virtually none. We got to say a few words, but whether we were listened to or not. But they have, and this is one in Buffalo, where they have the poles, instead of out at the edge of the road right away, they put them right down in the middle of the ditch. And I don't know if they plan on moving them. I don't know if Donnie heard anything from Buffalo Township, but I saw the pictures. It just looks ugly, so.
I think these are all reasonable concerns and good conditions that could be attached to a conditional use permit. Our projects aren't like that. We did the pollinator pledge, where we voluntarily agreed to put indigenous pollinating plants underneath the array, similar to CRP land throughout the project. And I don't know why anybody wouldn't, because it's cheap and it helps with erosion control, and people love it. So we do it. I can't speak for the other projects, but that's part of the scrutiny involved in the conditional use permit project. And that's why the ordinance is working.
Well, these things are part of the scrutiny if you have them laid out in your ordinance and you've taken them into consideration, but some of the things have not been taken into consideration, therefore are not part of the conditional use permit process, because this was a new process, we weren't familiar with it, and we, in retrospect, perhaps overlooked some things, so maybe that's why it needs a second look. But thank you very much for your comments. And if you want to come back and speak at a later time when others have completed, you have an opportunity. Sean, could you take the podium for just 1 second? Sean, how many people, how many different properties that you're aware of in Wright County have you received requests for information or just relative to the potential of a solar project that you're aware of outside of the in our jurisdiction in Wright County? Not ones that have come in with a permit in hand, but how many people of different properties has there been some level of interest shown for a project?
Mr. Chair, County Board, this has been going on probably for about 2 years. The initial request from our office, I'm going to approximate 4 or 5 dozen properties. We've had initial requests on, tell us about this property. Does it have an entitlement? Would it be eligible for a conditional use permit? What are maybe some of the constraints on this individual property?
Okay, so 50 or 60 potentially.
Potential.
Okay, and that includes what's in our area, not necessarily what's in Middleville, Stockholm?
That would be our jurisdiction, including some in the MOAA.
Okay, very well, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Sean here. Just to try to get some of this, you hear solar garden, solar farm, solar array. Is there a definition, meaning of that, or just people just using different words? That question comes up, and I don't have an answer for
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Potter, my understanding, solar garden originates from the legislation at the state level allowing a solar garden program to take place. In that legislation, I believe it's defined as 1 megawatt, and then there was some debate and give and take on what size a solar garden could be. When we did our zoning amendment, we decided to call it a solar farm. Our limit is 10 megawatts on a site for a solar farm. Mr. Kreiser was correct on a solar system. In agricultural zoning, you can do up to 100 kilowatts. And in residential zoning, you can do up to 10 kilowatts permitted, and this would not be affected by this moratorium. For the most part, that size allows for most individuals to do an accessory solar system.
In other words,
To a house, to a barn.
no real definition, they just kind of generalities is what people think is.
Well, we have it by definition in our amendment, or in our zoning ordinance, that a solar farm is greater than 100 kilowatts and is limited to 10 megawatts.
So you're saying, we define solar farms in our ordinance, solar garden is a term in state statute?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Delighten.
I just want to clarify, we have 4 approved currently, 2 are by utilities, and we have how many that are in front of planning and zoning that already have the initial application?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Delighten, 4 have been approved, 2 are in the process to be decided on.
So just 2 are in the,
Are still in the decision-making process.
so those are the only ones?
And
that-
obviously, nobody else has been able.
And then there's the various ones, 3 in Annandale, all the other locations as well. Isn't there about a dozen or more that have already started the
There's
process?
3 in the county under the Aurora project, but
Okay, so that's.
those were not permitted by
okay,
us.
So then, but then there's some in some cities too, and I know they don't fall under this moratorium, but
St. Michael and Otsego.
what would you say countywide, there's about 12 to 15 that have probably?
Yeah, I would estimate we've probably approved countywide about 100 megawatts,
St.
which is-
Michael has
which-
3, I know.
Yeah,
which is a modest-sized, coal-fired plant.
sure. Okay. Thank you, Sean.
Yes.
Who would wish to speak next? Yes, sir, come on up.
Name is Dan Killanen, and that I'm in charge of the planning and zoning for Middleville Township. And again, the question that our board is wondering at this point is that we have a project that we have been working with Wright, Hennepin, and Wayne here for probably close to a year now. And that we went through the hearings and that everything, and that they're in the process of getting ready to go and that with this. And that we're just wondering that, is this moratorium going to stop that program or not?
Does that one have an entitlement?
Yes, it does have an entitlement.
The property has an entitlement.
It does have it. We would be bringing it across the road, but they have some farmland with 2 entitlements across the road, and they're bringing that over so that it will use up an entitlement, and we will put a deal in there saying that 1 entitlement has been used up.
How many,
Go ahead.
how many acres are we talking about on this one?
Are we talking, is it 9, Wayne? It's 9 acres.
So originally, originally they were intending not to use an entitlement, but now they're gonna use one potentially? Is that what has
That,
happened? Or-
what we decided at the time when we had the hearing, that if it's required that we would have to take an entitlement, we will take it off.
Okay.
So we're still waiting for that at this point.
So Greg, do you want to comment on that? I mean, the application was in apparently originally not with the entitlement, but they have one they can move over. Does that beat the clock, or how does that work? Or would you need to kind of look at that before you gave them a?
Mr. Chair, it depends on whether or not an application has already been in at this point in time. If an application isn't in, the way the resolution is stated, it would apply. And the moratorium would be in effect if it's approved. I mean, the board could exempt out 10-acre size parcels in the moratorium, but I don't know from a planning perspective whether or not that's a good idea or that's a good policy determination. I think that's a policy determination for you to decide whether or not you want to do this while you're studying this, but from a staff viewpoint, at least from the county attorney's office, I would not recommend that.
So I think, sir, you just have to provide whatever documentation you have to our county attorney's office. They'll have to determine if a formal application had been presented and beat the clock, and if so, it would be in. If not, it won't be.
That's correct.
Okay. Yep, thanks. Who would like to speak next? Yes, sir, come on up.
Hello, Commissioners. Greg Frolke from St. Cloud, Minnesota, representing Novel Energy Solutions and Minnesota Community Solar. We would be against a moratorium. We're looking at some property here in, I think it's Franklin Township. And we just wanted to point out that a lot has been said already, but another thing we could add is there will only be a certain number of solar gardens. There's a capacity limit on substations. And unless they build some more substations, the capacity will be reached quickly. And then that's going to be it. And so there's another limitation. That would be the interconnection expense. Very expensive. So there's a lot of permits that are applied for, but there's a lot of projects that will never see the light of day because of the expense to see the entire process through. And so I think that there's kind of a, false sense of concern here about how many projects are going to actually be completed. And so keeping that in mind, I think it's only fair to take this on a project-by-project basis and look, for the best locations, make a decision on that, use your discretion. Not all locations are going to have a lot of excavation. Many of them are very well suited for a non-intrusive source of clean energy, and that is what our main focus is to find the best location for everybody. And I think keeping that in mind, this is a win-win for everybody. Clean energy, saving money, folks that can't put solar on their roof or in their yard or on their farm have an opportunity to access a community solar garden counties away, hundreds of miles away possibly. And that's really a great concept, and that's why the Community Solar Garden Program, I think, needs to go forward. It's been delayed for 3 years already. The law was passed 2013, and I just don't see where a moratorium is going to do anybody any good. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Marion, come on up.
Thank you, Board. I thought I would just give you a little bit of background from the state.
So everybody in the room knows who you are, Marion.
Of course. Representative Marion O'Neill, and I represent Buffalo, Monticello, and Maple Lake at the state legislature. I'm also on the Energy Committee that dealt with a lot of this in the last 2 years. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background and distinction, because you had asked about a definition. So we are talking about two different types of solar. We have the community solar gardens, which by law was supposed to be 1 megawatt. 1 megawatt is the equivalent of about 10 acres on average. But there was some court cases and so on, and so it's been defined actually as a series up to 5. So it could be a planning of up to 5 megawatts. That's what's in state statute and gone through the courts right now. Now that's one thing. So a lot of people that have come up to talk to you so far are from community solar gardens, and they're the developers for community solar. The other side of it is what the Aurora Solar Project is, which is utility scale solar. Utility scale solar is under the mandate, the 1.5% mandate that the state issued, which says that the IOUs, so Xcel Energy, Minnesota Power, Otter Tail Power, are by state statute have to acquire or have to achieve a 1.5% solar mandate. So that's a lot of solar. Xcel Energy changed their resource plan, I believe about in February. They're here and they probably will tell you that. And you realize the Aurora Solar Project is actually 16 different sites, and it's 100 megawatts of solar was what it was permitted at. I think it might be slightly more than 100, but that was the initial planning, was 100 megawatts of solar across 16 different sites, of which 3 sites are here in Wright County. Now, I was going to say Xcel Energy changed their resource plan to up it from, now they have to buy 100 megawatts of solar through this Aurora Solar Project to 2,400 megawatts of solar. That substantially changes the game. That's actually in excess of the 1.5% solar mandate. And I believe there's some people here from Xcel that can give you more explanation about that. But what that equates to is approximately 24,000 acres of land coming out of production for something. Because as you will hear over and over again from your township officers and others that have been doing the planning and zoning, and probably Commissioner Burrell has heard the same thing, that when we say things like, well, can't you use, a less desirable piece of land like a gravel pit that is now used up? The solar companies are saying, no, it's not acceptable. They aren't saying why, they just say no. Where are they ending up? On some prime ag land in Wright County. Now, that is continuing to happen across the entire state, not just here in Wright County. So I want you to think about this. So again, Xcel Energy will be moving to 2,400 megawatts of solar, which will be 24,000 acres of land coming out of production that it's producing something. We don't have a whole lot of land just sitting there doing nothing in Wright County. It's doing something. So it has to come out of production of some sort. The other thing to think about is, so that's the utility grade solar and then the community solar, so that's much smaller. Again, most of them are 1 or 2 megawatts and they can kind of string 2 different sites together to get up to 5. That's about a 10-acre piece of land. So that's a very, very different thing. The project in Buffalo Township is 80 acres. That's a lot of land. But that's just one little tiny piece. That's 8.5 megawatts of 2,400 megawatts. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what's coming. So I want you to think about that and keep that in perspective too. Thanks.
Marion?
Yes, Charlie.
Well, I've been told before by people that your number of acres that you're saying are wrong, but I just do this. If I got it, if you did just a 5 acre, it probably takes about 10 acres to get that with the setbacks and everything. But if they're putting these on a 30 or 40 acre site, the actual area that it takes to generate a megawatt is 5 acres, right?
10 acres.
It's 5. No, it's 5 of panels themselves. So if it's 5 megawatts, 1 megawatt is 5 acres, and then 100 megawatts, which is 1,000 whatever, right? So that would be 5,000 acres.
So Charlie, that number, the 10 acres per megawatt, that comes from Geronimo Energy, the Minnesota energy company that came and testified before the House Energy Committee.
Okay, so even
They are the
though
ones that said the 10
If we
per
even
one.
took the 10 acres for a megawatt, then it would be 10,000 acres. And I don't know where you come up with the 29,000.
For 2,400.
Right.
2,400 megawatts of solar is in the new Xcel Energy resource plan, and Xcel Energy has
I got it. I thought you
jurisdiction
were
here.
saying 100, so I was, okay. All right.
Thanks, Marion.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, come on up.
Dwayne Bauman, Franklin Township Supervisor. I think it's absolutely important that we do pass this moratorium and keep it going until we get a handle on it. You can tell by the desperation in the voice of the power company officials or the solar company officials that are here. They want to get after it, get it done now before anybody knows what's going on. I just witnessed the Carver County, as they voted unanimously to slow this thing down, same thing. we're hitting on prime ag land. Nobody seems to want to answer why they're determined to take prime ag land. There's a lot of other land that's suitable for this. But why they have to have the prime ag land, I don't know. I don't think we should be taking land that should be used for growing things, raising cattle, growing crops, our food supplies, everything, and putting it into solar, when we've got so much other land that would be very suitable or capable for this. So I think we do need to slow it down. Let's get a handle on it and find out why there's such an act of desperation on their part. Thank you.
Can we get, you know what, first we're gonna see if people get a chance to speak one time before we get, folks getting up there 2-3 times that have, who else would like to speak? Donnie, come on up. And then, sir, you're next. Okay.
Don Schmidt, Buffalo Township Supervisor. Our township wholeheartedly endorses this moratorium. Bob just mentioned slowing down. I think we do need to slow down. We would ask that you implement this moratorium. Also, we have 2 large projects in our township that should be coming online by the end of the year. This will be a good test. Are they going to be good neighbors? So far, the one that we got out there doesn't seem to be too good of a neighbor. So it'll be a good test to see. Also, it'll give our residents a chance to see how well are they going to accept this. Is this something that we want in our township? Is this something we want in our county? Let's see how this all plays out before we jump in with both feet. That's our opinion. Also, I'd like to make a rebuttal to the first gentleman that talked. He said, in 25 years, we can turn this back into farmland. It's as good as the day that they took the land. Well, I haven't heard of any of these that have been around for 25 years, so there is no test to see yet what the results are going to be after this land has been used for 25 years. My opinion is it's not going to be like it was when they first took over the property. So I guess that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Ron Bowen, and I am the president and owner of a company in Princeton in Sherburne County called Prairie Restorations. So we restore land and wetlands, prairies, woodlands. And we do a lot of work here in Wright County as well. We have 6 locations around the state, so we serve the Midwest. I just want to say that one needs to look at the potential benefits for these sort of projects. Land use is always somewhat controversial, and I think that we have an opportunity here, or you perhaps have an opportunity to do pollinator plantings, which are very valuable and extraordinarily needed. So yes, these sites can produce energy. We all turn on the lights, that's important. This is an age-old energy battle in a way. But we also have a new need, a newly recognized need for insect populations and wildlife populations. And these solar farms have a great potential to do that. I think a potential that we lost with the CRP program. When the CRP program was planted years ago, the diversity wasn't there. There was no focus on wildflowers and pollinators. This represents a great opportunity, and not just in Wright County, but statewide. So I just hope that you're aware that that benefit is there. It would be up to the individual solar developers to utilize those sorts of seed mixes. It would add realistically to their cost. I don't think in the big picture of things very significantly, but it's something that could be asked for, I think, by the county and their permits, and you would gain a tremendous benefit from that.
Have you worked? Go ahead, Chris.
Oh.
I was saying, have you worked with any solar projects already, providing your?
We are online to do a fairly large project in Marshall this year, but we have not done that yet.
Chris?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Ron, I was curious, I mean, I think that's great, we need to bring our bees back, and they're kind of disappearing. Have there been studies, though, because there is the humming of the solar panels, there is that hum, has there been studies about how it might affect the bees, and if they're actually going to be attracted to these with that humming going on?
Yeah, I don't know. My answer is I'm not sure of that. We have the University of Minnesota studying honeybees on our farm in Princeton, and their food needs and so on. But the real issue here, and I think it's important to understand this, honeybees are not native to North America, and they really consequently feed primarily on European plants, sweet clover, red clover, white clover, plants that are very typically planted in farm communities. Native pollinators, which are coming to be seen as far more important, bumblebees, for example, a huge array of different kinds of flies and insects, feed on native plants. And those native plants are really disappearing. They don't have much left to work with. So this is an opportunity to help that. Planting, whether it's 100 acres or 1,000 acres, every little bit helps. So I think that there's a great kind of unseen potential benefit here. So that's all I have to say, I guess.
Thank you.
So, thank you. I'm Dean Leishow, Sunrise Energy Ventures out of Minnetonka, Minnesota. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Does this document camera work up here?
Yeah. You don't think it's there for looks, do you?
Well, I wasn't quite sure. Let's see, try to get this down here. We just put together a little illustration here that maybe helps explain the magnitude or lack of magnitude on what we're all talking about. Right now, with the 6 projects that 4 have been approved and 2 pending, you're looking at this little square down here of land in Wright County, which is less than 0.1% of the land in Wright County. So I would share many of the opinions of those who came up here before me that the magnitude of this problem is completely overblown. You've got a lot of agricultural land, you've got a lot of undeveloped land, you've got conservation reserve land, all of which vastly dwarfs anything that the solar program would bring to your county. And this is very reflective of Minnesota in general. Even if the 24,000 acres of proposed solar or needed solar comes to fruition, you've got 86,000 square miles of land in Minnesota. We are really talking at the end of the day of less than 0.1%, even far less than that, of land that would ultimately be used. We participated in the ordinance in Wright County and spent a lot of time before many of you, and we were ultimately approved on our permit, and I appreciate that. I think that the permit was the permit process was well thought out. I think it keeps the control for the community solar gardens where it belongs, and that's with you. You have the ability to take and learn from what's going on, what you've heard. You can also improve upon your conditions as you move forward so that it should be a self-improving process. It's not cast in stone. I don't think the moratorium buys you a thing. These large programs that will be needed for Xcel Energy to produce the type of solar they're talking about producing are not going to go through you anyway. They'll go through a PUC process for which you'll have no control. So you may be able to influence the PUC to give you more control than you had, and I think that might be a very good idea. The big reason we're here is because a project or two didn't have to come before you, and you see the resulting outrage and problems with that. So I would urge you to keep the program and the ordinance. I encourage you to continue to approve upon it and work with those developers such as us and others that have come before you and said, how can we be good partners? What kind of conditions will we work with and apply to our projects? So again, thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Potter?
Yeah, Dean, I got a question for you. Okay, how do we get the message to the Public Utilities Commission that projects like the Aurora out there that have caused a lot of issues?
Right.
How do we get them so we actually have a say before they start just shoving it down our throats in Buffalo Township's case, you know, you get a bad taste with the solar now. And
Right.
probably gonna have for a long time, and who's the next township that's all of a sudden gonna have the same thing? How do we get to them to let them know that we have a displeasure with this?
Well, I think you have to have a concerted voice in front of them. You know, I've been in front of them dozens of times, and quite frankly, in this process, I did not hear a lot from counties and townships such as yourselves. And I think now that you know that that is one way that these projects can go and will go, there's no doubt about that. I think you just have to have the right kind of voice. Maybe it's your representatives that can stand up and say, we want to have a better voice in this. We want to have control. You need to have a presence. You need to make your demands known. And we've been in front of them before. Hell, we've sued them before. I mean, maybe that's where you need to go with some of this as well.
Okay, short of suing them.
I understand. Well,
Would
sometimes
the
you have to.
Send the shot over the bow and let them know that, hey, we are not happy.
Yeah.
You know, that's one way of looking at it. Maybe this is how we get their
Right.
attention.
I think just have your representatives do that, your elected officials. I think they can help you in that, and I think you should do it.
Joe, Marion?
Mr. Burrell?
Mr. Chair and Board, I wanted to point out too that Dean, you know, sitting on the Planning and Zoning Board, his company, I felt, was probably the straightest shooters that we ever dealt with, so I want to commend you on that. He brought up some things that would be potential concerns that we weren't aware of, and that was the interconnection, the way Excel was requiring some of the interconnection with their lines is every 5-acre cell needed a pole of its own. Then the solar company needed a pole. 10 feet away, Excel would have another pole. And so if you had a 40-acre piece you could have 16 poles. And anyway, and you pointed that out and very upfront with us. And it was a thing where we were just like, wow, we need to make sure that we are just requiring that they can't do this from on. And now Dean did say that he did go with Excel, and you can tell that you renegotiated, so you're gonna have this switching facility, so it's
Yeah,
gonna come
Excel-
out with just one connection now.
Yeah, you're right. You know, Excel, it's been difficult, but they're beginning to cooperate on that. There's a number of developers that have requested that we do it in a different way, and there's a number of townships, counties, cities that have said this is an eyesore. It's not particularly well engineered, and I think we're seeing a lot of progress with that now, being able to take down those 10 poles and do it in a different fashion. I think that's good for everybody.
And your project now in Monticello is going to be
Yeah, we're
that
going to
way?
take down the 10 poles and put it on the ground where it belongs.
Okay, wait a minute here. What, are you, and what project is that one?
This is
85th Street, the gravel site.
Okay, Monticello Township, or which one? Okay.
Monticello Township.
That one's been approved.
Yeah, right.
Quick question, have we heard back from the PUC? Or has the township heard back from them? Do we have anybody from the PUC, or do we have anybody from the?
You know?
Yeah, our letter was to Aurora, though,
It
wasn't it?
was
CC.
Elan or whatever there.
Yeah. Do we have
Mr.
anybody
Chair,
from there?
Mr. Chair, I have not received anything from the PUC. I did notice I received an email about 15 minutes ago from the representative of the Aurora project. So stated that she'd left me a voice message, which obviously I'm down here and haven't had a chance to listen to. But is stating feel free to reach out at any time, so.
I just summarize with what I think I was trying to say is that the best way maybe with the PUC is to let them know you have an ordinance and you want them to use your ordinance. If you have a moratorium or effectively no ordinance, they'll have no really alternative but to make up their own mind. So I think the ordinance in place with a lot of very proactive, well thought out conditions is the way you keep control.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'll get to you next, but just a second, just a couple, you want to turn the lights back on, Mike? A couple comments relative, because you had a nice graph up there. I think it does make an interesting point of the bigger picture of the volume, but on the other hand, if you look at these things, and of course, we're just in control of Wright County here, and we're just one small county, but I think we have a responsibility to do the right thing here, and hopefully there's other county commissioners and other counties in the state doing the right thing and across the country. Because if you look at the numbers and you talk about the numbers, there's a huge impact, and in Wright County, it might not seem like so big of a deal if less than 1% of our property, of our farmland went into solar, and would that, be the biggest problem in the world? Perhaps not, but I think we can still do better. I mean, if we can do it not on the best farmland, it still would be better. If we can make sure, if we're using good farmland, that we do it in such a way that at some point in time that farmland is viable again, that's better. And again, if you look at it just in Wright County, maybe it's not so important, but, you know, Marion talked about 24,000 acres, and I'm not sure if that's the number or not, but it's probably in the ballpark. And if you bring that across 50 states, let's say all 50 states were gonna have approximately 24,000 acres, then suddenly, where are you at? You're over 1 million acres. You're around 1.25 million acres. And do we really want 1.25 million acres of good farmland taken out of production in the United States when we could choose less viable property, or if at least that property was gonna come out, that we made sure that it was able to come back into production at some point in the future. So again, we can only handle our little area here in Wright County, but there ought to be 5 people or more all over this country in different boards having this same discussion and making sure that something is done, that long-term, that, you know, we protect this, because a couple thousand acres in Wright County might not seem like a big deal agriculturally, but if you take this across the whole nation, then maybe it does matter. Maybe it does make an impact, and if we can do better, why not try to? And I think that's what we're trying to accomplish here. But, yes, sir, come on up.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Mr. Chairman, you've taken about, my name is Alan Johnson, Woodland Township.
Okay.
You've taken away about 50% of what I have to say. Very good job. Common sense. That's what I'm here to talk about. The interaction that just took place with this gentleman before and Commissioner Burrell, and he said that he brought up a lot of good points that we didn't even know. You gentlemen and ladies are very intent on trying to do the best thing for Wright County. And just by that last interaction, that last 5 or 8 minute interaction where you talked about the confusion, you guys are very well versed and you're very knowledgeable and you're trying very hard to do your level best. And what we're talking about here is a moratorium. The moratorium isn't going to kill it. The moratorium is putting a stop down just to rest, and let's take a look at it. Just by going through the Wright County Planning and Zoning website and going and looking at something as innocuous as putting a roof on your house, you've got standards, you've got photos, you've got all kinds of information. There's a lot of information that we need to do to have you comfortable with what's going on. I believe that I stand in support of the moratorium, and the reason I stand is because take some time and we'll put this thing together. We're not putting a halt to it. We're trying to just get our hands around it so we can have some common sense. My dad always said, and for me, he was a pretty smart guy, if it's a good idea today, it'll be a good idea tomorrow. And by rushing through some of this and by pushing this, what do we have to gain? And we got to look at what are the gains and what are the losses. On the March 17th Planning and Zoning meeting, Commissioner Burrell said, and I quote, that the farmland that they're talking about in Woodland Township is some of the finest farmland in the state. What we're doing is we're offsetting, we need to look at this, what we're offsetting is we're bidding this solar against the farmers, so that the farmers are getting 1/3 or less rent for their land than what these solar farms are willing to pay. And that's kind of curious. Why would they be willing to pay that much? I assert to you that there's, right now, by a limited search on the internet, there's not a place in the United States that takes used solar panels. So that's something to take into consideration. Are we allowing prime farmland to become hazardous waste dumps for later on? Where are we going to put those panels? Those are just some things that a moratorium would have us all, so we could, everybody would be comfortable and everybody would have the standards put in place of something of this magnitude. I assert that this is much bigger than re-roofing your house or putting some siding on, and there's, go to your website, there's lots of regulations on that. I'd like to close by, without having this be emotional, I'm from the old school where word means things. The mission statement for Wright County is to preserve and enhance the quality of life of the citizens. It's providing quality service through a participatory process that holds the welfare of the citizens and the environment as its primary objective. That's the heading on the website for Wright County Planning and Zoning. Underneath there, it says, Wright County Planning and Zoning Ordinance, the intent, protect ag land. That's what's written on the website. Protect public health, safety, morals, comfort, welfare. Conserve natural, scenic beauty and attractiveness to the community, and conserve natural resources. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Good morning. I'm Colleen Hollinger with Prairie Restorations as well. And one of the things I wanted to address with Commissioner O'Neill is, while it would seem brilliant to have, to use places like gravel pits for solar, they're oftentimes in very remote locations, too far from substations. So we end up finding the land that's closer to power, so we have to use fewer poles and that sort of thing. But one of the things, I grew up in Steele County in Owatonna with the, am I keeping you up? In Steele County, and that area is also known as part of the Big Woods, which is also where Wright County is located, and historically the Big Woods. My grandpa told me early on that in order for his farm to be there, a lot of his ancestors had cut down a lot of trees. And you know, we know in Wright County the same thing has happened as far as the number of trees that have been removed for farmers to be here. And I'm pro-farming, but I also want to just have us ask ourselves a question. If this was if a young farmer had come through and done what Aurora had done in effort to bring more land into farming, would we be here on asking for a moratorium on farming or new farmland? If that makes sense. So so the whole moratorium about taking the trees down, some of the hysteria, I think is if we challenge ourselves. If we were doing that for increasing farmland, we might not be here.
I think there's some rules against that. Isn't there
Well,
some sod-busting rules?
you can't clear cut and then
Right.
be involved in the farm program, and
Right.
overwhelmingly, the agricultural land is in the farm program too, so to that extent, the answer would be yes.
One of the things that, Stearns County had a hearing just like this 2 weeks ago, and I think out of that hearing, one thing that we need to ask ourselves is, can we ask the solar developers to be good neighbors with us here in Wright County by increasing, by doing things like underplanting with prairie. What we know is in even 5 years, the amount of carbon that goes back into the soil that can be later used if we decide to put that land back into farming. The carbon that's back in the soil is much more improved than if we had kept it farming over the same number of years. And this kind of comes back to the whole issue of what can we do with conditional use permits. We can ask the solar developers to be good neighbors by underplanting in prairie so that we have the pollinators there, so that any contiguous farmland that's around, whether the crop is largely wind pollinated or pollinator pollinated, we've increased that ability. Even if it's just a farmer who has green beans growing nearby, having increased pollinators with underplantings of prairie underneath the solar panels improves all of that. I think we've heard from commissioners here, or the township people, but we haven't heard from some landowners. I currently live on a lake, and I really get the whole visual part of a solar field and what that does. I think we can go back and within our ordinance, ask the solar developers to make sure that the buffers are the tall prairie grasses. We can do things so that it's a visual that improves what we as landowners are going to be seeing. Stearns County, rather than having the moratorium, they tabled the moratorium and instead implemented a task force. And that included a couple of landowners, some county planners, and then a couple commissioners. And so my recommendation is, rather than the moratorium, if we could consider tabling that and instead ask for a short-term running task force of some people who have immediate interest here, who are the landowners and the people who drive by this every day. Ask them to participate in the task force and have that be a 2 or 3 month task force. Thank you.
Thank you.
You forgot to plug the Steele County Free Fair.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the biggest fair in the state of Minnesota, biggest county fair.
Good morning. My name is Karen Edwards. I'm from Woodland Township. You know, to tag on a little bit to what Alan said, the whole mission is about preserving the land, and also all of you representing what the people are asking for. The people so far that have come up here, for the most part in favor, are the people making money off of this. It's not the people who are going to have to live a lifetime, whose family handed down this ag land for hundreds of years and hoped that their children would farm it. Those are the people that we are. We're not the companies. And I wanted to address a few of the points. People talk about in the past meetings that this is going to create jobs. It's been proven that this does not create jobs. If you look up at Buffalo Township, the only jobs it's creating are for the people in Italy, Greece, and out of the state who are coming up and went to see that site with Marion and Bruce Anderson. They asked them, and also with Dwayne. That's not local people working at all. We're giving all of our ag land and everything away to people who could care less what they're doing to our properties. And none of the energy generated, particularly in Wright County, is coming to benefit the people in Wright County. Why are we paying the price to provide energy to the people in Edina? And there's an article that states in here that solar power is great for the people and businesses who want it because they don't want to install panels on their own property. One would have to ask why. Why would they not want to install on their own property if it's going to directly benefit them? Because right now, not one of us is benefiting from anything that's going on here. We're just trying to protect what our families have left us. The company, and I am on the 70th Street Dempsey specifically. That permit, I understand, has been granted, and I'm asking for you to hold on that one as well as part, and add that to the moratorium. And the reason being, for a number of reasons. One is, there's a gentleman who studies this, and his job is actually, he is a professor and a specialist of corn, soybeans, and small grains. And he studies crop science. And he put this paper out, and this paper is specifically targeted for people who are planning on leasing their land or selling their land for solar farms. And he brings up 4 points that should be addressed by not only the person going to lease it, but also the county and the area that we need to make sure this is addressed. So this is a guy who studies exactly what we have, corn and soybeans, okay? And he said, number one, solar farming, and oh, by the way, farming and gardens is trying to change our culture and the wording. These are not gardens, and these are not farms to try to make it acceptable language for people. These are factories, and these are plants. They are power plants, and they generate what power plants generate, and they generate what factories generate. They don't grow flowers. They are not for animals. So he says, fact number one, solar farms will change the future of the productivity of the land. Because solar panels only capture 20% of the light for only about 5 hours a day, the rest of the solar energy passes through to the ground. As a result, grasses, broadleaf weeds, and eventually woody shrubs grow. And then he goes on to talk about high rates of herbicides that would be required to keep that level down so that you don't have those overtaking the area. Okay? And he also mentions that, and this has been denied in other meetings, and this gentleman says it is true, and he studies it. He said the negative impacts on the land from herbicide residue, soil compaction, erosion, and particles coming from damaged panels that are left to fall into the soil will contaminate it by heavy metals and rare earth elements used in solar panels. You know, it's nice to say that the silicon is sand, and it paints a nice picture, just like the word farm and garden. But that is not sand in there. They take that, and it is treated with toxic chemicals. If you look and look online for yourselves, how that is the inside of these panels, what is treated to make that sand efficient to absorb the light, it is chemical laden. In addition to that, they tried making the actual manufacturing of the panel more or less contaminating, but the fact is they've had to use lead in those panels. So when we get hailstorms and those panels fall and break down, or deer jump and break them, or whatever the case is, that stuff is going into our ag land. Later on, having to try to clean that up when we don't even know what it's done. It says, all right, and I know this is a little bit long, but it's very important, okay? His last thing is, because of the lost productivity and the change that this will cause in your farmland and your community and the loss of land, it is highly unlikely this land will ever be farmed again. Loss of scarce resources like farmland will have tremendous and significant impacts on the community. You wonder why they're paying $1,200 an acre instead of $200 and $300 an acre for a farmer to farm it. And it says, with the loss of land, it's not only the loss of land, it's the loss of revenue to businesses that sell seed, fertilizer, chemical dealers, hardware and lumber suppliers, equipment manufacturers, and other businesses that depend on the agricultural production in our area. Okay, and so these are things they're asking again of the person thinking about leasing the land. And it says, third, you could be stuck with the loss of decommissioning. Right now, a lot of solar farms and operators are not requiring decommissioning. Perhaps we are, but it says, where's the money to decommission and where will these people be? They're coming, in the case of ours, Minnesota Solar, if you Google them, like I can Google any one of you and I could probably find out what you had for breakfast because every detail about us is out there. There is nothing on Minnesota Solar. Why can't we find that? Now, we know they're part of U.S. Solar, and we know that they're putting this under Xcel Energy. But Xcel Energy, interestingly enough, in a statement that they made recently in an article, states that they will take, let me just find it. Xcel will take no responsibility for any claims or contracts of these solar operators. The only thing Xcel is doing, and this is in, this was from Bemidji, March 2nd, 2016. Xcel is leasing their name and logo to these companies so that you, as a consumer, trust a big company you know and that you believe will always be there. They're telling people that they're not taking any responsibility for what these companies underneath them do. So we don't know who Minnesota Solar is or U.S. Solar, and we have a history already of about 70% of the solar projects started have failed. And they're gone away, and they've gone bankrupt, including the one.
Just so everybody can speak, can you maybe start?
I know, I'm
wrapping up
sorry,
here?
but there's
That's
just,
fine. I don't
there's
want
just,
to, yeah, but I do want to make
and
sure
I
people
appreciate
don't have
that.
to leave the meeting for another
Right.
commitment, not get a chance to speak.
Right, and I'm sorry about that. Okay, and so the last is going to be, solar farms is not a good use of our land, and it says, the farms are inefficient in producing the energy. The only reason it's becoming a viable project and a business is because of generous tax credits, the waiving of property taxes, zero-interest startup loans, and federal and state mandates, and also federal backing. And it says, for us, we will pay the taxes, we will pay the higher utility rates, we will change our agricultural properties in our communities to accommodate these solar farms, and we don't improve our climate or our environment, and we don't get any benefit from them. And we can ruin the land for our children and grandchildren. And just to speak to the gentleman that said it doesn't harm the nature and the agriculture and the birds and animals, this is an article right here that is from Fish and Wildlife Services and also a Climate Central. And it says that there have been 233 birds recovered from sites that have died due to solar power. And the plants are now under federal investigation. They say the birds have been fatally singed, broken, and otherwise crippled by these facilities. Their feathers ignite in midair after flying through the concentrated beams of light. And it says they're burned to death, and they're killed by brute force when they crash to the ground or eaten by predators who swoop in. And if we look at what is it doing to those birds and what's coming off of all of this, this lady right here, she lives in an area, where is that? Okay, right here. In this parcel, and I don't know if all of you can see it, do you see this little square right here? That is this lady's house. It goes right up to her property. That little square, she is completely surrounded, and all she has is 50 feet around her house. How are they to come out and enjoy their yard? How are they to live with the glare that comes off of these and the heat that's generated? And God only knows what else could happen to her being so close. Because remember, this is a power plant. And you, Ms. Commissioner said, it does create a hum, and it is creating power.
Where is that located at?
This is Dempsey and 70th Street, and this is the one that was already approved, which I'm asking for you to please include in the moratorium. And it is right now.
And just relative to that, we don't have the authority to.
Well, it's relative to that.
Include one in the moratorium that's already been approved, just so you understand.
And why is that we
Because
can't?
that would not
Can we
fall
create?
within the guidelines of the law.
Can we create another one then for that until we figure this out?
It's already been approved. It's been approved. You can't put a moratorium on something that's been approved. Mr. Kreiser, you can stand up and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm speaking accurately.
But.
Okay.
So where does that leave me?
Has this been approved?
Did you go to any of the public hearings, ma'am?
Last night, all I received was one saying, do I want,
And this.
do I want electricity from there? I see one like that.
You got a letter from the
One
people.
last night, I didn't know it was approved already.
And we do not get electricity from this, and she has to pay the price. And in fact, this is our property. This is in our front yard, right here. And this is her property.
The planning commission has not approved the CUP. The permit has been in.
Okay, they've applied. Okay. The fact that they've applied, however, gets them ahead of the moratorium, so therefore, if they meet the criteria, I mean, I guess the planning commission will have to decide whether or not they meet the conditions of the CUP. And what conditions, if they do, then what conditions to place on it to provide for it to occur.
All right, and then just one last thing, and to follow up to Alan's thing. This is an article on the panel manufacturer, just one statement. And it says, this is from the panel manufacturer itself. It says, solar farms are mostly erected on surfaces that are not usable for agriculture. Suitable areas include landfills, former military areas, abandoned mining sites, industrial properties, commercial wastelands, and desert regions.
Thank you. Who else would wish to speak? Yes, sir. Yeah. Oh, no, he hasn't spoken. That was Bob that did. Come on up. Come on up, John. No, John, come on up.
John Sanskowski, Franklin Township Supervisor. I would support your solar moratorium. For one thing, it goes against the City of Delano's land use plan. It goes against our Franklin Township's land use plan. And overwhelmingly, the residents that come to these meetings don't want it. So aren't we supposed to pay attention to the people that live in this area? And as far as farmland goes, I've heard the comment so many times about in 25 years you can turn it back to agriculture. This isn't going to happen because the farmers that need that land to survive are going to be gone. And 25 years is a long time. And I've spoken to an electrician, and someone else from the solar industry can probably address this better than I can, but he said when the subsidies are gone, the solar panels, the cost of them, they can't compete, they can't pay for themselves. So whether this is true or not, I don't know. But one last thing, I think it's time that we somehow get government back to where it belongs, to the local people, and not listen to unelected officials like the PUC and so on. And to me, this whole thing seems like a Trojan horse. I think we need more time to find out more information about this, so I would support your moratorium. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Yes, sir, come on up.
Good morning, Chair and Board. My name is David Holland. I have 40 acres just below the proposed area. I admit I didn't come ready, but to me this was more important. I could have been ready and stuff, but I couldn't, and I don't need to apologize for that. This discussion is not about solar versus no solar. everybody knows solar is good for our environment and stuff. But this proposed farm thing, it's ludicrous. You know, we're taking prime farmland and there, you know, a few years ago, the politician had a slogan, you know, if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a big pig, you know. Doesn't change anything. So you can put farm, you can put garden. It's not a garden, it's not a farm, it's not, you know, for nearly 30 years, I planted thousands of trees and seedlings in my 40 acres, and it's becoming a piece of heaven. Now, all of a sudden, I am subjected by people that have no interest. And similarly to the pig and the lipstick, somebody is gone and got a 679 bow tie and come here, doesn't make them a good source. They're all in it for the money. And the minute things don't go their way and make money, they'll file bankruptcy. You know, LLC, find out how many bankruptcies are there for LLCs every month, okay? So to have all these towers, ugly towers and stuff in my backyard and stuff that they will file bankruptcy and nobody's gonna, it's up to us to pay to try to remove them and stuff, that's not the right way. And last thing, because like I said, this is a slippery slope. This is a slippery slope. If this goes through and approved, I guarantee you, mark my word, I guarantee you, I have partners that I'll come and convert my 40 acres into a casino. And I dare anybody to tell me that the casino is not better than this ugly towers and stuff. I can show you with all kind of spreadsheet and stuff that the casinos will bring real jobs to the woodland and all that good stuff and stuff. You know, this is a slippery slope, and you guys here were elected to do the right thing. And I believe, I'm calling your conscience. I'm calling your conscience and soul to do the right thing. This little area is not just some little area that we don't care. That little area is not, it's not next to this guy with a bow tie or the other guy. That little area is across from my land that I bought for over 30 years, and I planted all those trees and stuff. So I'm calling your conscience to do the right thing. Or else, you know, like I said, I have my options. You know, you approve that, I dare anybody to deny a casino in Woodland Township. And where does this stop? You know, nobody's is against solar and solar power. We're all for it. But, you know, this is not the right way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just again, just so it's clear, if a project has already been applied for, this hearing today is not going to impact applications that have already been applied for. They are before the moratorium. The purpose of the moratorium is to make sure that before we change our ordinance, others can't apply in advance of changing the ordinance and amending the ordinance. And the second thing is the guy with the bow tie works for the county, not for the solar business. That's the second thing. Okay? Okay, who else would like to speak? Come on up.
Good morning. My name is Julie Mader. I'm a homeowner in Woodland Township. I haven't heard anything about health. How is this affecting our health? It's killing birds. What's that going to do to people? I personally think that people are more important than a bird. And we already know the birds are dying. Now, as far as the bees, look at my lawn. It's full of dandelions, and there's loads of honeybees there. I'm supplying that in our county, in our township, so we don't have to worry about that. There are health issues with the stray voltage that comes off of any power source. We're talking overhead line, we're talking light bulbs. It is measurable with a meter. And their farmers are having cattle that are dropping like flies because of stray voltage. It goes on to health issues. You know, you're going to have aches and pains. You're going to have fibromyalgia. You're going to have an early death from this because it's killing birds. It's killing your system. Once it changes the electronic spin of the system, your body no longer can function in a normal state. And eventually, you're going to have health issues. Now, I'm living in an area where there was a project approved by the county. And we had a hearing, and obviously it went through. Now, again, there was no health issues ever considered in this. But now I am paying the price for many, many years and my family of health issues due to methane gases and everything else from a feedlot. Okay, now we're going to have another health issue just north of me with this. And now it's almost like no one has a regard for everybody's health around there. Okay, let's look at this. Take time, do your analysis, do the studies before you rush into anything. There's people here to make money. We need more energy, I get it. But we have technology. Take this methane, captivate it, and use that for power to run your furnaces and stoves. We already have it there. It's already one project done. I'm saying there's other resources. It doesn't have to be solar. It's been proven that the solar panels are not producing. They're not very efficient. There's a lot of loss on that. There's so many negative things to solar. There's other options. Let's investigate other options for our power usage. We need it. I get that. But I think we have to really look at what are the health issues with all these projects that we're trying to keep up with our standard of living that we have today. So that's my concern is, let's look at the health. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak?
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Andy Melka, 111 Kellogg Boulevard East, St. Paul, Minnesota. I work for Minnesota Solar Connection. We're not Minnesota Solar, it's a different company. We actually have no projects going on in Wright County. I'm really here as an interested party and as maybe hopefully somebody that can help bring a couple of additional facts to the table. There's been a lot of talk, obviously, about prime agricultural farmland and diminishing the amount of farmland that is available and producing in the state of Minnesota. While we were back there, I looked up the USDA farm report from June 30th, 2015. In 2013, Minnesota had 19,450,000 planted acres. Now it's 20,630,000 acres, an increase of over 1 million acres in Minnesota alone over the past 2 years. There's a lot of different drivers of the agricultural market, as you all know. There's, worldwide commodity prices. There's a whole, the weather plays a huge role. Technology plays an even bigger role. And I think that some of what you've been hearing today is really red herrings about the agricultural industry. These are voluntary leases that the farmers sign into. They are signing into something because they can make better money and support their families better signing a solar lease on that bit of ground than they can farming it. And that will go on. And I think I just wanted to come and correct the record on those few points and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else would like to speak? Harlan, come on up.
Harlan Anderson. I'm a farmer in Cokato Township. My family is putting in their 147th crop this year. It's been there a long time. I have 2 generations to follow me. I'd say a lot of these comments here today, I'll tell the board that as a farmer, I'm kind of offended. But before I say that, I just hate this was on the record, but I think you guys do a really good job. I especially support planning and zoning. Tom Salkowski, before your time, was really good and approachable and answered questions. So I have a lot of confidence in planning and zoning to do their job. I have a lot of confidence in you guys to do your job. But realize a lot of the stuff that's said in here is using me as a farmer, as a pawn to say, well, we have to look out for the farmer. Where was Marion O'Neill and her people when they wanted to take 1 million acres or more out of with buffer strips with no compensation and no way for us to have input. That law was passed 10 minutes before midnight at the special session, and we had no input into it. So everybody that's talking about this poor farmer and we got to save ag land, no, I think you got to find out what their special interest is. I, as a farmer, I've had a lot of education. I've got a lot of history. I'm not a supporter of ethanol. I think raising corn does more damage to our water quality and our land than anything else. Wind power, I can understand to people that's a little bit offensive to see them. I see a solar panel, I think it's on County Road or Highway 55. It looks like funny sheep on the hill, but that's about the only offense it is. So I would say that, you know, I have confidence in you guys. I have confidence in your rules. I live by your rules. Most people think I should be mad at them because I do a lot of stuff, but the rules are there for a reason. If you have an ordinance on solar panels, live by them. If some areas, townships or something, don't want to have them, like you said, or somebody said, they have a right to their own moratorium, and I think they have a right to do that. They got elected officials, but I'd say a lot of the stuff that you've heard today about farmers and being good to farmers and the environment. My family was here when the lady talked about the big woods. My grandfather was born in a log cabin that I still have in 1871, and we cut a lot of trees down. And so I think you should consider the science. I said, get away from the emotional thing. The other comment that I know the people at the Public Utilities Commission, be careful you don't put a moratorium on. So they'll say, well, if that's the way they're going to be, we'll just do what we did with the, was it Aurora? Yeah. Anyway, as a farmer, I'm not opposed to the panels. I'd like to see if it's a good idea. I'm not going to pass judgment if solar panels are a good idea because there isn't enough science behind it. But we need to look for alternative energies. And it just doesn't seem like these people are concerned when our taxes, my wife is upstairs writing a big check to you guys today. You know, nobody's given me any rebates on that. Yet you want to take my land for, you can send your snowmobilers out and run me over. You can send your hunters out and shoot at me and all that kind of stuff. But when you talk about farmers and trying to save farmland, just ask a farmer. I got a lot of history. And I would say to the board, after today, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer your questions relative to this idea, this moratorium and everything. I don't disagree with the people. We need to learn. But you can't learn how to run if you don't make the first step. So that's my comments. I look at this and say, if I'm right, I hear they're paying like $500 an acre with the price of corn and beans today. You don't think the farmers are going to take advantage of that?
Up to 1,000.
Well, anyway, but I think that the farmers are out there. They're good people. They've been here. We're paying a lot of taxes. Our taxes I'm paying today certainly doesn't reflect $3 corn, I'll tell you. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Harlan. Thank you.
Chair Harlan, I think the fact that the ethanol plants are closing kind of speaks to that, and that was kind of the greatest thing in about 2000 or whatever, and they're finding that they are not so efficient and they're closing. So
I think
Dried up, they dried up.
I think that you raise a good point, and that's why we should explore this stuff, because I did my study with some of my chemistry friends from college in 80 and 81 and found out that ethanol wasn't sustainable. And then all of a sudden it became a political thing, and they haven't figured out how to hand off that political hot potato, and hopefully they will, because Mary Wedder's here, and my farm is a Minnesota Clean Family Farm, water quality farm, and we take pride in the fact that we are concerned about the environment. We do study these things. I did not get on the ethanol bandwagon when I found out it wasn't sustainable. I'm not into the corn and bean rotation. I'm more into alfalfa, as you know, so I'm glad to hear you say, I haven't heard it, but I'm glad to hear you say the ethanol plants are going to start closing down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll be available. He can find me.
Thank you for that big check, though.
Steve, come up. No, Dwayne, we got right behind you first here. We're going to wait till everyone goes through once before we go for second runs, okay?
Good morning, Commissioners and Chair. Steve Nisbet with Wright Hennepin Electric out of Rockford, Minnesota. I just want to spend just a couple of minutes. We've heard a lot of talk about the Excel Community Solar Garden Program. I want to make sure we're on record that Wright Hennepin is not under the Excel Community Solar Garden Program. We have no state mandate today to do solar, so all of our solar is being done because our members have asked us to do some solar. We have 24,000 of our 50,000 consumers of our cooperative that are located in Wright County. And we've heard 63% have expressed an interest in having solar power as part of their future, if it's economically viable, safe, reliable, and stuff, fits the needs. So we're not doing the solar because we're under some mandate. We're doing it because the economics are to the point where we can build a project and move forward. As far as being from somewhere else, we're local. We've been in this county and this area since 1936 when we were formed. We're going to be here all the way through the life of these panels and beyond. As a cooperative, like I said, we're member-owned. I believe we submitted a memo to the county board for consideration to allow smaller scale projects to proceed that are low impact from the farm side of the house, no clear cutting, close to substations. In our case, that's a paramount concern, is being close to the substation. It drives the cost up. Our two sites that are going to be affected by the moratorium are within 400 feet of the substation. They both take up 10 acres. They're 2 megawatts. So I can't speak for the other developers, but in our case, it's not 10 acres per megawatt. It's 5 acres or less per megawatt, so we're taking up much less land. And as I mentioned, like I said, we're close. We're not doing any clear cutting. We have had the relationship with the landowners there, and they've been okay with us putting the solar panels on the land. Last piece, Commissioner Sawatsky had asked about the Middleville Township project. We did get approval from the conditional use permit approval from Middleville Township previously for that project. However, because it did not have an entitlement, we were waiting to the decision of the Wright County board on allowing the stuff on it restricted parcels to move forward. So we can work with the county attorney on whether or not, if we get an entitlement, if we can move that project forward. But otherwise, the other site we mentioned in Maple Lake Township would be affected by this. So just want to make those comments. I appreciate your time. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks. Who else would like to speak? Can we see, Mr. Supervisor Dahlman, or can we make sure everyone gets a chance to speak once before we go back to people for a second time? In the back row. Then you're first on my speaking second list.
You're number one.
Morning, Commissioners, member of the board. My name is Chuck Beisner with SunShare. We are from Minneapolis. We are a community solar developer. I think what you heard today is a lot of the issues that have been brought up is utility scale solar that has caused some issues. What we're asking as community solar developers is please don't shut the door on us. We are the ones who want to work with you. We want to work with the neighborhoods. You have a great ordinance in place. You're allowed to put as many conditions on any developments that we have, and we think it's working well for the few projects that have come through. So with this, we'd ask you to not put the moratorium on. If you do think you need to change your ordinance, I would ask you to follow what Stearns County did and set up a task force and work through them over the next couple of months and change any part of your ordinance you might think you may need to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, well, I just wanted to say, I'm not sure. I look at all the concerns that I have, and I'm not sure we really need to change our ordinance. We need to, though, be looking at what conditions we are going to impose, because I think we've missed a few of them. You know,
Certainly, and like you said, it's a learning curve, and I think the Planning Commission has learned quite a bit.
I hope people are, you know, a little bit forgiving for the planning and zoning and the county board when we put this ordinance in, but it's a new industry for us. It's a new industry for a lot of the counties around here that we tried to make contact. I mean, Sean, we worked pretty hard. We had a lot of meetings and we had public hearings on it and stuff too. So, but I don't think the ordinance that we came up with is bad, but I think need to look at some of the conditions. Right. You know, when we put a road in, you put gravel. You know, whether we have to come up with is there a membrane thing that we can put on before they put the gravel that, you know, can keep it separated, and then we're going to have to bond for that. We've neglected to do that for the road part of it. You know, we have a reclamation thing for the panels at the end, but the road thing has slipped by on a couple of these projects. So.
And I would just add to that, during your conditional use process, you have the ability to add any
Exactly.
conditions. And so you can work with the ordinance you have. Each project, each application that you will receive will be different, and so all the conditions may not be the same. That's what's nice about the process you have in place.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Burrell brought up a good point when saying that this is new to us, because the comment was made that this is going on 3 years, they've been working on this. Well, in the history of our county and the history of our land use plan, 2 to 3 years is a very short period of time and completely new industry that we didn't anticipate, 3 years ago. So that would be one of my comments for people that are wondering, if we can move this along. Well, there's so much to take into consideration. As you said, you did write a good ordinance. There was a lot of work that went into it, but there's things that have come up since then that we didn't know we needed to address.
Who else would like to speak that hasn't?
Mr. Chair, just another comment is it's about the local control. It's the frustration with the Public Utilities Commission just bypassing local controls. If the locals approve it, whether you like it or not in your township or whatever, you had a say. The locals had the final say. The ones that are the frustration is the Public Utilities Commission that just bypass us completely, and here you are. Sorry for the interruption.
Fine. Jerry McGrath, Waverly. I just have one question, and I would like to have it addressed, or if somebody could address it. How, say if you're a neighboring property owner, how is this going to affect one's valuation?
I guess.
And I would like to have that taken into consideration, please.
I don't know that anybody here can give you an answer for that.
Why is that?
Well, I think.
I mean, isn't that an important
It
part
is
of the
very
equation?
important.
I mean, if you're would be a neighboring to one of these plants?
It's part of the conditional use permit process for the board to take into consideration whether or not there's a negative impact on the adjacent properties.
Right, and if there is an impact on it, what are you going to do about it?
If there's a significant impact, I don't think it's supposed to be allowed, correct, Mr. Kreiser? If the board finds in their belief that there's a significant impact on adjacent properties, then it shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, but who would want to have one of those next door to your, would you want to have your home next door to one of them?
I have
Maybe if you get a cut out of it.
Jerry, I have one just north of our farm and one just east, and I'd rather have them than the development come out and surround me with a bunch of homes.
Well, I guess maybe that's
a personal thing.
But I just have traveled 90 south, and over maybe the past 15 years or whatever, and those wind farms, how they have virtually destroyed the natural beauty of the area.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak? Scott, come on up.
Thank you, Chairman, County Commissioner Scott Johnson, Excel Energy Community Relations Manager. Just a couple topics. We're not leasing our name, our logo to any community developer, solar developer. That's just one issue. We're actually taking action against them for using our name. It's we're kind of in a partnership, but they're their own entity applying to use the community solar program. And there is two programs, as I think you guys know. The utility-based solar program is one that is cited by the PUC, and the community solar program, which we are handling, applying, solar people applying for that program through Excel Energy. So, and just one other comment is I worked with McLeod County. They had a breakout session or some other session to work on these issues, and that worked out well, those type of things. So I would just make that a suggestion. It went through that, and that's how they're going through their CUP process for solar companies. So
Scott, as long as we got you at the podium, I don't mean.
That was what I was afraid of coming up here, but that's all right.
The Aurora project, of course, is an XL territory, and did XL put those power poles in there? And can you explain how they ended up kind of within the right-of-way as opposed to at the end, and will that be corrected, or?
I don't know all specifics of that project. I do know, so the site is owned by the developer, so some of the poles that they were talking about earlier, the 10 poles or whatever right next to each other, we needed to have that separated in case there was issues with our substation. We need to be able to take that power offline so we don't have live electricity on something like that that would interrupt service to everybody else. So we needed some kind of switches and those type of things, and understand that's being worked through with the developers as time goes along. I mean, this is new to us, all these processes too, going through them, so engineering. The power poles along the township is, I think, what you're referring to.
Along Eakin Avenue in Buffalo Township. That
Yep.
Are
So
well within the edge of the right-of-way. One, they weren't supposed to be there at all, and two, they're way too close, so do you know anything about that, and can that be corrected?
Yeah, and there's a little misunderstanding. So in the site, I understand that those facilities have to be undergrounding. We're regular permitting, or in that case, that township doesn't have a permit process. So we have done what we always have done, is what I was told, is put our power poles in along the edge of right-of-way as practical. And I don't know if there was trees in the way why it got pushed down in the ditch a little bit further. That's the way I was told, is to get away for some of those trees, to leave as many as they could, you know. So that's why they got further down in the ditch. But that's not, those poles are not part of the state permitting process, because that was not on the site. It's in the township, like any other power line that we would have. We would go through that permitting process with, well, if the township would have had one, we would have went through that process, or with county, city, state, whatever, that regular permitting process. So that area outside the site is governed by townships, cities, whoever.
So what communication has taken place since it's kind of occurred between XL and the township?
I know Marion O'Neill contacted us, and that got over our state lobbyist, and honestly, I don't know if that person talked to the township or not as of yet or not, so.
I guess I'd like to see a face-to-face, a sit-down between the
Yep.
appropriate people from XL and the Buffalo Township Board and whoever they chose to have there, and have a discussion on that, because when I look at it, and I just drive down the road from just a matter of common sense, it doesn't look right.
No.
So.
Well, with that, but there's another pole right next to it.
Well, there's another pole that's on what would appear to be the edge of the right-of-way, where you would expect poles, and now there's two, and,
You know,
it just seems like it ought to be corrected.
It just
It
seems-
shouldn't be there for 25 years,
Well,
is what I'm saying.
It's a safety thing too. I mean, let's
Might as
say
well
that
take
you
care of
get
them
an
right away,
icy,
but-
you get an icy road, now you slide in the ditch. Before you would've just went in the ditch, now you go and hit a pole, and these are some pretty hefty ones.
So I agree, yes, we can sit down and talk to the
But can
township,
you
but I
make-
was planning on doing that anyway. I just didn't know where that conversation was at, so.
But can you kind of see to it that discussion gets
Yes.
held?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Scott, so you've got is that a state requirement or a federal requirement that you have 1.5% of your energy supplemented by solar?
State, yes.
Okay. And so that's still supposed to go into effect by 2018, or what is the time frame of when this is supposed to happen?
I don't know if I have the exact time frame when that was supposed to be implemented,
Maybe I
but
just read that somewhere, maybe I'm confusing it, but, so, after so many years, if this is proven that this is not efficient, I mean, at this point, they're saying that the solar arrays are about 18% efficient. So, if they don't gain more efficiency, or we're finding out that this is actually costing more money after the subsidies are gone, and you know, the taxpayers are perhaps supplementing these things, is that at some point, it might be that the requirements are lessened or dropped? I'm just kind of curious, since we don't know, this is so new, that's got, you know, my primary concern. We just don't know.
and I just seen it's by 2020 that we need that, so that's part of it. And I'm sure the PUC, the legislators, everybody's gonna be looking at this, make sure, you know, it's all new to everybody. So they're the one that controlling the 1.5%. So and any future mandates that come to utilities. So, but I know legislation has been involved with this, and obviously will be continue to be involved with this to make sure it's the efficiency as, you know, as possible, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Who else would wish to speak that hasn't spoke yet? Anybody else? Leander, come on up. Oh, you're heading that way, okay. I was gonna say, he didn't raise his hand, he just went to the podium, there's a reason. Anybody else wish to speak that hasn't spoke yet? Supervisor Baumann, you want to come up and speak again, please?
Dwayne Baumann, Franklin Township Supervisor. We had gotten a call from Gordy Simonton from Solar Stone, and he offered to help us with our moratorium, because Franklin Township did in fact pass a moratorium, and he's offering his assistance for helping us get through that, which I think we're going to take advantage of that. I think it is important to keep the moratorium going. Let's get a handle on this. We're going to slow it down, get a handle on it. We're not opposed to it, but we want to look at the lands. I was approached after the last planning and zoning by Minnesota Solar, and he said to me, what do we have to do going forward? Meaning, this isn't ending with just a few solar farms, gardens, factories, whatever right now. But he said, what do we have to do going forward, 2017, 2018, and so on? I said, do not approach us with anything that resembles good prime ag land. You can approach us with other stuff, but do not approach us with good prime ag land. Thank you.
Come on up, sir.
Thanks for letting me talk again.
Just your name again. For
Okay.
the
Greg Frelke, St. Cloud, Minnesota, 50 years. So I've been around a little bit too. Just want to clear up a couple of things about the location of these facilities. It's very limited as to where you can put these and make it financially viable. Excuse my cold, by the way. And that's why you're not going to see endless sites that develop. Again, it comes down to capacity and the right locations. And a lot of permits are submitted, but many of those will never make it. And so you can't use that as a judgment as to just how much we're going to have in solar facilities down the road here. But you want to talk about the ultimate dual use property. One of our facilities in St. Cloud, right in the middle of the city, we're going to have 3 megawatts on a cemetery. You just can't get better use than that. After 25 years, this facility will be removed, and then they can use the property, you know, as it's needed. Unless we have the bubonic plague or something, they shouldn't need it in 25 years. We have a parcel out east of St. Cloud. It's going to be 5 megawatts there. It's totally abandoned property. It's fairly level. There's a little brush, not intrusive at all. So there are opportunities to put these facilities in the right places. The reason it's desirable to be close to a substation, and that's why there was this gold rush mentality to get those prime spots, is because it's a lot less expensive. And so it's driven by profit. It does cost a little more to find property that's not going to be intrusive to the landowners. I wouldn't want one right out my back door either, I can tell you that. But it doesn't have to be. And the board really has the last word, or the local government has the last word in your ordinance. It can be denied. And so I don't think it makes sense to have a blanket moratorium over everything. We will have solar. It's just a matter of when, but it doesn't have to be another 3 years. And Colorado has had solar now for what, 5 years or better? Ask them how it's working there. It's working very well. St. John's University has, I think, 1 megawatt plus, and that has been scrutinized unbelievably by everybody. And they are not having dead birds or animals, as a problem. I was just there. They had a tour a couple of weeks ago They're the only hum that we heard, and they have a tracking system. That did make a little noise as it was tracking, but a lot less noise than the freeway, which is about a quarter mile away, and it's just nonstop trucks. You can hear it. That's a lot more bothersome than a little hum or a little noise on a tracking system. And so when, at the end of the day, a solar facility like that, for all the good it can do, is a much wiser choice of property, and it doesn't have to be prime farmland than putting up a couple more car dealerships one after another, which is what we see in St. Cloud. It's not the quaint little 80,000 plus population city it was 40 years ago, but nobody complains after they're there. And you go to Wake Park, again, it's on one corner, there are 6 car dealerships. That's a little bit much. You know, where was the planning and zoning then? And you want to compare that to having an obscure location for a community solar garden. I mean, we can fit that into our society and our landscape right now, and it's not going to be intrusive. And a lot of people like the opportunity to save 10% on their electric bill, and to have an opportunity to, you know, to connect or be involved in the generation of clean energy. And as far as the location, why don't, you know, more people have it on their own property? They don't have enough property to make a difference. You need about 20 solar panels, and a lot of people don't have enough room on their roof, and if they do, maybe it's shaded, maybe their yard is not situated right, and so that eliminates a lot of people who really would like an opportunity to connect to a community solar garden, and there is a huge demand. We're talking, and that's residential. We're talking with a company in St. Cloud right now that's probably going to sign a contract. They spend $500,000 a month on electricity. That's a lot of juice. And I worked for Burlington Northern for many years, and I can tell you that that track between Fargo and Minneapolis through St. Cloud is about at capacity. And you like having these lights on? I'll tell you what, as our demand goes up, I don't know where the fossil fuel's going to come from and get it from point A to point B. Something's got to give, and we can't keep waiting and kicking it down the road here until everything is absolutely perfect and we have all the answers. I don't think solar energy is really all that dangerous, to tell you the truth. And if you do some research, I think that you'll find that that is the case. And, you know, so I'm against the moratorium, and I hope I've laid out a few more facts here that will help persuade you to.
Thank you.
Yep.
Craig,
Yes.
I just want to point out, the entire Planning and Zoning Commission and the county board, all of our members also visited St. John's. And I don't know if the inverter makes a little bit of a
hum
noise,
right there.
And when they moved, but if you were 100 feet away, you couldn't hear it.
No.
I don't know if it would bother a bee coming in there or not. I don't know that, but 100 feet away, there's no neighbor going to hear any noise.
Talking about, you know, the facility being in harmony with nature, I mean, they've got the pollinating flowers and things, and they're talking about putting sheep in that fenced area in lieu of cutting the grass. And so that's another great dual use for that property. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Anybody else wish to speak?
No, I said I wouldn't like that.
Yes, ma'am, come on up.
And there are plenty of
I
places.
just have to clear out the things. You said that if it was within your property, you would deny it, the solar panel. One of you guys
Who are you
did.
talking to?
One of you guys did.
That if it was within
think
our
that-
property?
Yes, you said if they put the solar stuff within your property, you'd deny it.
I guess I'm not sure of anybody making that comment.
One of you guys said
Well,
that.
if it was on our own property, we wouldn't even apply for it if we didn't want it, but.
Yeah.
And you also said that this is already passed and we can't do nothing about it.
I don't know if it's passed. Somebody said it had passed.
Well, I thought you
didn't say
guys
it.
up there said it's already passed, so we can't do nothing about it. I was thinking it was him.
It's already been permitted.
It wouldn't fall under the moratorium.
Well, if it's been permitted,
Permitted, whatever.
this moratorium would not apply to it. If it's already been applied for,
So if this makes noise
moratorium
within
would not
100
apply
feet,
to it.
This one has been
if
applied.
this thing is
Yes,
gonna, yeah,
exactly.
this
But-
noise, this is gonna make noise within 100 feet, and they're gonna put these within 50 feet of my house?
Well, what is the property line setback from adjacent properties? Charlie, do you know it off the top of your head?
50 feet,
50 feet from the property line,
but the planning commission can require.
We,
a greater amount, okay. So, yeah, first of all, if your house was on the property line and they allowed the minimum distance, it would be 50 feet, but ma'am, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with your case because I'm not on the planning commission.
That
but-
picture she showed, my house in the middle of
I
that thing
understand.
is where my house is.
So, is this Woodland Township or Franklin?
This is Woodland, Worms property, Woodland Township.
Okay. So this is before the planning commission. The planning commission will decide if it meets the conditions of the conditional use process and then what conditions would need to be placed on it.
It's an active request.
but I would recommend coming to the meeting Thursday night.
Is this
Okay.
Thursday?
Right, Sean?
They're requesting a continuation. I gave her my name and
Oh, you're gonna continue it this Thursday?
Now, would she have received a letter regarding this?
From the county planning and zoning, yeah.
She would have received something in the mail, nothing published, it's
I
something.
received one letter saying something about if I wanted to get a decrease in my electric bill.
So you didn't get a letter that said there's a hearing on the property next to you, you can come at this time and date to give input?
Not that I know of.
Okay,
All
well,
I can remember is one saying that, maybe it was the same one that says I could get a decrease in
No,
my
that
electric.
wouldn't be from us, no.
no.
Okay, so they approved one up that way on Brell's land somewhere?
Yeah.
But they didn't approve one that was that close to anybody's house, did they?
Those panels aren't, well, the one that Waverly approved is right across the road.
But this one has not been approved yet, so I need to talk with Sean.
But I would say, yeah, you said, Sean, we're gonna continue it?
my name and number and recommend you call me.
Ma'am, can you tell us your name, please, for the record?
Pauline Stoll,
Pauline Stoll?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I've lived there for over 30 years.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Connie, come on up. Yeah. And also, if you're coming up, if something's already been stated, we understand that there's more than one person in the room that maybe has a opinion on things. So if we've already heard something, you don't feel inclined to have to repeat it. Donnie?
Just a comment on the gentleman that spoke before. He said, keep the conditional use permit in what we got now, and then we have the say about it. The township has the say, and then it goes to the planning commission. The large one that was approved out north of Buffalo here, not the Aurora one, came before the planning commission, the Wright County Planning Commission. Buffalo Township was adamantly opposed from day one. Unanimously, town board, all the residents. Came to the Wright County Planning Commission. There was 2 planning commission members that were dead set against it. And the first meeting, I think one was absent, so it was a tie. Tie vote, I believe. So it got continued like 2 times. Eventually, it was passed, I believe, on a vote of 5-2 or 5-3. Against the wishes of the township. Now, the point I want to make is, you're saying we have control. Okay, let's say, now the Wright County Planning Commission approved it, therefore it's been approved, it's going in. Let's say they denied it. And the reason the Planning Commission members that voted for it, the reason they gave was that they were in favor of it, is they said, these applicants have met the criteria, therefore we have to vote for it. Well, that's a good argument, but that takes control out of any of the hands that we have. Also, if they would have denied it, the applicants have the option of district court.
Yep, you're right, Donnie.
They take that to district court and they meet all the criteria. If I was a betting man, I would say they're going to win.
Yep. And that's why the ordinance needs to be changed, because right now, someone can come in on a parcel of prime farmland in Buffalo Township in the egg zone, and they can meet the criteria, and I think it's too difficult to deny them and have it stand up in court.
Right, thank you.
Today, you're exactly correct.
But, Mr. Chair, we have not approved the restricted farmland component of that.
Yeah,
correct?
it can't be approved there.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen a hand in back somewhere, I thought. Oh, ma'am, okay, come on up.
To the gentleman who just spoke about not wanting it in his front yard or backyard, thank you. Right, and although we have one in our front yard, I'm not here just about us. I'm here about all of them in Wright County. And to address some of the issues, one of the things that keeps being brought up is the financial viability of this. And they need to put it on our prime ag land because we're close to a substation. If I was going to open a business, which they are going to do when they put in a power plant, it's my responsibility to pay for whatever it's going to cost. And in thinking about opening that business, I think about, is it financially viable and is it profitable? And I don't interfere on someone else's rights to do it. And their right to have silence and you know, to the point about humming, I don't want humming. I'm out in the country for a reason, because I want to hear birds and I want to hear frogs, and I don't want to hear, even if it's a low-grade hum, I don't want to hear it. So my suggestion is to the people who want to put these in, evaluate it, and if it makes sense financially, fine. So, and if it doesn't, that's fine. Don't take prime ag land. We have all those gravel pits, use them. If that doesn't make sense, then it's not a viable business. Simple as that.
Folks, please, no discussion from the audience.
The other thing that's happening that I'm not sure you all are aware on, and it was interesting to hear that this is a learning process, because it is for us as well, because we're not experts, but we're learning now. What we're finding in some of these solar factories that are going in is once they're in and we've given away the right to that property to let them do what they want, there are cell towers being put up. There are wells being dug. And there are microwave towers also going onto that property, because they're trying to maximize the use of it. And one of the reasons for cell towers is if the group...
You know, you keep saying all these things,
Mm-hmm.
but can you speak to some facts? You know, you keep saying that this is happening. Where is this happening? Instead of theoretical.
Okay, I don't have that exactly with me right now. I was trying to
Then
present...
I would rather you stick to
All right, but
facts.
but it is something to consider when we are writing guidelines, what can actually be on the property.
And I think some of that has been addressed.
Okay.
I think if a moratorium is put in place, or regardless of whether one is put in place, I think if you have more factual analysis that supports those positions, I think the board,
We can.
it'd be very important for the board to see those.
Okay, because I did bring that one factual study from the gentleman who was the crop scientist, and so there are others like that, but I didn't want to take your time to bring the whole studies. I was just trying to summarize. But to the gentleman from XL, and he said that there's a lawsuit about using your name, and I commend you for that. However, all of this literature is out there. And there's a gentleman named Lee Gabler, who is your strategy director. And in these programs, he said that XL is not taking responsibility for the claims and contracts that are being offered by these solar plants.
You mentioned that before.
Right, okay. So with that, he also says, we don't believe that we're liable for the fraud that they will put on our people. Okay, but I don't know if anyone realized what this solar contract is. They want 20 to 25-year contracts. That's like people taking a mortgage out on their house. And it is unclear right now, and this is something we do need to look into, what does it mean to the people who sign up, who take that 20-year, 25-year hit? And
Are you talking about buying the power, or are you talking about having the...
No, this is the contract to
on
get...
their land?
Yes, no, this is people who want to be part and do the subscription.
I'm sorry, but I don't think that necessarily is a critical component to the land use aspect we're looking at.
You are right.
Business needs to see if they have someone that buys it. We are not going to be contract attorneys and
Right.
try to figure out if somebody's getting cheated or not.
No, but
You have to be buyer beware there.
And I agree.
We're talking about the use of the land and whether or not the use is appropriate, if so, where, and how best to put conditions on it to protect the property and adjacent properties. I've heard things like that before. I'm not disputing you that there may be some challenges relative to those contracts. I'm not disputing that. But this board doesn't want to step into those waters.
No,
nor
and
do we have
I
the authority to
understand
do
that.
so.
I understand that, sir. It's part of the
I
education.
know, but I'm trying to just get this public hearing done today, and if
Right.
we waste time on things that aren't part of the public hearing, it'll be a waste of time.
Okay, well, it's part of the education process that we're all going through.
But not at this point.
So if you can kind of
Okay.
wrap up your
Yep, I
aspect
sure will.
relative to the land use component of it.
Yep, I sure will. Just as a point of reference, because we're trying to find examples of different things to prove our point. And in Woodland Township on Emerson, there's a project, and Woodland Township requested a bond for that area, and they have not heard back, and the project's been stalled, right? So it appears that these companies are not willing to put up bonds, and that is from our experience in Woodland Township.
Thank you. Anybody else have any closing comments? Leander, you're asking for permission to go to the restroom or come and speak?
I did that too, Commissioner.
Okay, come on up and speak.
I'm glad we created some humor. The underwetter buffalo, I think it was, thank you, Commissioner Swatsky and the other commissioners. I think Commissioner Bell brought up a point a while ago about that they could bond to make sure these pieces of land. And my question is, what size bond? Because I can go back to 1972, a gravel pit that was put in on the back end, not on our farm, but the farm right next to it. And at that time, planning and zoning required a $500 bond. I got some of the people mad because I was arguing for a bigger bond. It was a big company. And I was told that at that time, Planning Commission, that, oh, $500 will do a lot of work. That was true in 1972. I mean, 1972, you could still buy a car for $3,500 bucks. But today, that farm is, part of it has been sold, part of it's in the estate. They had a cost-effective bid to clean what was left of that gravel pit up for $16,000. So my question is, think about, I don't believe in solar in the first place, but think about what are we going to do to make sure these things get cleaned up?
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Anybody else wish to speak? Final call for speakers. Marion, come on up.
Thank you, Commissioners. Again, Representative Marion O'Neill, representing Buffalo, Monticello, and Maple Lake, and I've kind of been in the middle of this a little bit. I just wanted to commend you for having this hearing today and really listen to the people and to really weigh both sides of the issue. I'm not pro or against solar, but I am pro Wright County and making sure that we're doing what's right for the people. Something else I wanted you to think about, that as this whole conversation was going on, that you know, I introduced an amendment and a bill to say that no permitting can be done if 3 or more acres will be clear cut. And the reason is, there's a big reason behind it. Part of it is what happened in Buffalo Township, where they clear cut 11 acres of mature hardwoods. But another reason is, if you think about, again, and Commissioner Sawatsky, I really appreciate what you said about the statewide impact, and what we do here in Wright County is really going to be looked at across the state. And in line of that, if you think about what the 1.5% solar mandate will do to the entire state of Minnesota, I had a conversation with Minnesota Power that has mostly up by Duluth in that area. So they're literally in the woods, in the North Woods. And they told me that they can't do any solar projects in their service territory without clear cutting 100% of forested land. So now we're talking about clear cutting 100% of the land to put in solar panels and put in solar fields. Now, they don't have to have as much solar as Xcel Energy like we do here. In this service territory, it's much less. But I want you to think about the concept. The concept is, there is no law that says that they, right now, unless my amendment passes, there is no law that says that anybody can come in and clear cut 100% of the trees, which, by the way, for every acre of trees, it does capture 6 tons of carbon. If this is really about carbon and saving the earth, then I don't understand why we would go first, not last, to a forested area. So I want you to think about the statewide impact, and I really appreciate, Commissioner Sawatsky, what you had to say, and the fact that the entire state is looking. We have media from not just the Twin Cities, but everyone will be looking at what we're doing and what we're saying and the impact in the state. So I want you to think about that the land use is incredibly important. And we do have great concerns about taking this prime farmland, and of course it had 11 acres of trees that were just clear cut. By the way, when I had a researcher at the House, a representative, look at the initial filings from Geronimo Energy and NL Energy, it was not approved for them to cut trees down. So that probably will be a lawsuit coming as well. Now, that was just a quick look at it, so I need to do a more extensive look, but this is brand new. Like you said, 2 years, 3 years is not a lot of time. I'm not here to tell you to do it or not do it, but I do really appreciate the fact that you're taking a pause, you're talking about it, you're thinking about it, and I do want you to think about the statewide impact as well, not just about Wright County, and I commend you for what you're doing today.
Thank you. Okay. Now, apparently this has spurred some other discussion. Please come up and please make it brief. And then, sir, you're second and you're third. Again, since you folks have already spoke, let's keep
I
it
know,
briefer.
I just can't let that go. But my name's Greg Frelke again from St. Cloud, Minnesota. I have a cabin northwest of Brainerd in the wilderness. Built a cabin myself. Pretty special place, been there for 40 years. Do you want to come and take a look at what the DNR does there as far as logging and what the result of that looks like when they're done? It's not pretty for many, many decades. And I can prove it. I could take pictures and show you. It looks like a bomb was dropped in that area. We will do a lot less damage with solar than they're doing to make a few bucks cutting trees. And they cut everything, birch, oak, maple, and they don't clean up their mess. You can't even walk through it. In about 5 years, the popple grows back like this, and you hunters know what I mean. It's just disastrous. And so where's the concern about that? Do we really need to do all that logging? So as far as that as a reason to not go forward with solar, that's not true. And as far as prime farmland, I just said a few minutes ago, we don't have to do that. There are plenty of opportunities to build these facilities in non-prime agricultural areas. And so we don't need to have a moratorium to use our head and discretion. Thank you.
I know we're running out of time. Name is Dan Killinan, and I was also from Middleville, but also a shop teacher for 34 years. I got most of my fingers so that we don't have to look. As I say it, that one of the little-known laws that are on the books, that you can only clear cut an 18-acre spot. That is a federal law. And that because of the clear cutting that the gentleman just talked about, that is what they were stating, that at the time that people were complaining about the clear cutting that was done around. And so they brought that down to 18 acres. Now, again, that they can be close to it, but they can't be continuous. So, again, the 11 acres that we're talking about before, that was in the state statutes that would be in there. So, okay.
Thank you. Yep.
Thanks for letting me speak again. I'll be real quick.
And your name again?
Oh, Dean Lyshell, Sunrise Energy. We're hear a lot about farmland. There seems to be a debate about prime farmland versus solar. And I can tell you that just about every property that we're building on is being farmed today, but also just about every property that we're on. Our biggest argument when in front of a township or a county is the future use, which is usually development for that. So I think the only way to have that kind of a discussion is to be able to take it through the process that exists today to determine what is the true land use long term. Because if we're going to put solar on it and that farm's going to go away in 5 or 10 years anyway, I'm not sure that there's any difference. And so there probably is a really good reason to continue the process to talk about what's prime farmland, what's not. I got to tell you, every time I've been in front of someone, whatever land we had was the best farmland they'd ever seen. It's just part of the argument. But that's everybody's opinion. So my opinion is you have all the control that you need. You should probably improve upon your conditions like you are. The moratorium is not going to help because there are too many ways around it for the things you won't have control on. Just keep it, improve upon it, and I'd be happy to participate in any of that improvement process that I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final comments? Last call for final comments. Okay, Mr. Kreiser, I can close the public hearing at this time, correct? Yes. Okay, at this time, the public hearing is closed.
Mr. Chair, can we have Mr. Kaiser come up to the podium?
Mr. Kreiser, can you come to the podium? Got a question for him?
Are you going to ask him how much this will take us?
More than $6.
You overpaid.
More than that. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dahlleiter, how can I help you?
One quick question. right now, does our ordinance require the townships to give us approval?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dahl-Leiten, the ordinance does not require township approval. What we require is township input. And that input is evaluated and taken into consideration by the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Sometimes they follow it, sometimes they go against it.
Okay, so if the township were to say no, do we have, would that legally hold up in court under our current?
If, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dahl-Leiten, if you denied an application solely based off of the township's denial of it, I would have a hard time finding that to be reasonable.
Is there a way that things can be done so that we could legally survive a lawsuit on that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dahl-Leiten, you need to apply the facts that you're given to the Planning Commission to the criteria in the ordinance. And we need to make specific findings detailing how it would impact the health, safety, and general welfare, and also property values would be included in that as part of that denial process. You can't use neighborhood opposition in and of itself as a basis for denying an application. You need to have concrete facts to back up why you're going to be denying that application at the end of the day. And that was the problem I think that the Planning Commission reached on that particular parcel in Buffalo Township that was approved, is we didn't have the concrete facts supporting the public health, safety, and welfare on that denial. And I would second, Supervisor Schmidt's comments. I think if it was challenged, it would have been a very difficult defense on the part of the county.
So, Mr. Chair, Greg, then we would have to revise the ordinance that we have to include that aspect, that we would need the township's approval.
You couldn't do it. You can't revise it to do that, though.
No, you can't do that.
Okay.
But what we could do, however, perhaps is to sit down with the various townships more in depth and look at their specific township and create an overlay district whereby in advance of things coming, and we say, in Buffalo Township, these are areas that solar panels would be acceptable, and in this other township, these might be other areas, and having a discussion and having good reason for those areas, potentially then that would be something that could stand up in court. You would agree?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I agree that if you're going to be trying to create an overlay district, I think that'd be appropriate. Also, creating conditions that could be used as a potential denial if they're not met, I think also would be in order, if that's the case.
And how long would I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
How long do you think something like this would take?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dahl-Leiten, if you're looking at an overlay district, at least a year, up to a year. If you're looking at minor tweaks to this, having a couple public hearings talking about the conditions that we currently have, just maybe going through that, I could see that being done within 2 to 3 months. So it depends on how far the board wants to go.
Mr. Chair, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to continue the moratorium for 3 months.
Okay, wait a minute here. Don't we have a resolution in here?
You have a draft resolution for 12 months, Mr. Chair?
And for some reason now I'm not seeing mine, but okay.
on the backside of
Let me see which one's on the back.
And
That
Mr.
one there. Okay, I think.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dahl-Leiten, it can be lifted in less than a year.
What's that?
It can be lifted in less than a year if you wanted to.
That's the maximum, but it can be lifted.
I know, I just wanted to try and push things a little bit faster. If I say a year, it may not,
Wait, just so we
may not do anything.
Have you made an actual motion
Yes,
yet, or are you
I
kind of
did.
thinking out loud?
No, I didn't make a motion.
So you made a motion to put a moratorium in effect for 3 months, based on this language, and then placing 3 months where it would say 12 right now?
Yes.
Okay, so everything would be the same as this, but where it says not to exceed 1 year, you would put in 3 months.
backside of this page.
That was my motion.
Okay, so, and that would read fine then, changing that 1 year, not that you necessarily support that aspect or idea, but that would be an acceptable, doable, and it would read fine, and we could do that, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Dahl-Leiten, yes, staff could easily go through this and take out anywhere it says 12 months or 1 year.
Yeah, at least
On the
twice
s-
it's in there.
At least twice it says 12 months. I think in one part I have a year.
One, yeah, it says 1 year and it says 12 months, okay.
So-
So replace 12 months or a year with 3 months would be Commissioner Glidden's motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll second it for discussion, and if Mark doesn't like it at the end, he can withdraw his
Okay,
motion.
motion for a second by Commissioner Burrell. Any further discussion? I'm fine with shorter than a year, but to me, 3 months is just outrageously putting way too much pressure on. And maybe something like 6 months would be more agreeable too.
But we have really good employees, and
Well-
I think they can handle the pressure.
I think that's an unreasonable expectation. Now, I know, for example, as far as the law goes, if we put 12 months in, you can extend it for another 12-month period, that's correct?
I believe 12 months is going to be your limit.
So does that mean
We
that
really
you
wanna
have
try
2
to
years
keep it
total?
tight.
If you put a different number in, like 3 months or 6 months, then can you extend out 6
We
months?
could
or-
extend it another 3, yes, Mr. Chair.
Or, well, if you only did it 3, you can only extend it 3 then, or could you?
Well, we
extend
could
it 6?
extend it another 9 in theory.
Okay.
For a year.
What he's saying, it's not, you couldn't extend it beyond a year.
Having heard that, I would be okay with 6 months, just because I just think we put an unreasonable expectation out there.
And if it happens before 6 months,
And then you could always take it off earlier. If you got it done in 5 months, you could take it off a month early. The other thing I think you could do too, and we've heard, Wright Hennepin sent us a letter, and I don't know that here today we want to be parceling things out, but I think if you got a committee together, and there was some people from a couple people from up here, and some people from some of the townships that are concerned, and Wright Hennepin or XL Energy, if they were interested in being on there, and a couple people perhaps from the solar industry themselves would be good examples of some folks that could be on this committee that would have some expertise. It would seem to me that maybe early on in the stage, they could decide what really is the issue we're trying to get at here, and is there some things that are not problematic that could be exempted out? In other words, if everybody agrees that 2 megawatt site immediately adjacent to a substation is not the problem and not the concern, maybe a couple, 3 months in, the task force says, maybe we recommend the board lifts the moratorium on this component, but these other components are areas that we really need to look harder at and address some things with the moratorium. Now, maybe the task force doesn't come out with that opinion, but that's something they could consider, whether there's things, because right now it applies to everything. Are there some things we could throw out of the wash and let stand and go because they're not creating the problem, but these other things we need to look at longer, so. But, so everything wouldn't have to necessarily be as long, but I just think 3 months is too short, and I don't know if anybody over to my right would be willing to make one, try to pass an amendment for a longer period, like 6 months or something like that, but.
Mr. Chair, I'll amend my motion.
We don't have to vote on it, we can amend it, but if he's gonna amend it himself with a friendly.
I'll amend it for,
6 months?
or for 6 months.
6 months, does
And
the
I'll
second
second
agree?
that.
Okay, second agrees to
I
that.
guess summer is coming, and our attorney probably takes, a lot of vacation during that time.
Okay.
So we may need.
Mr.
to
Chair,
extend it.
I think the task force is very appropriate.
I agree.
We need to get more information. We've got different things going on. We've got state, we've got a local company, and we just have so much going on that I agree. We need to
Get
weigh
your
in.
calendar out.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've got a motion consistent with this resolution we have before us, changing all the 12 months in a year to 6 months. And I don't know, Greg, do you want to just read that then? So everybody here, because the other folks in the audience don't have it. Do you want to just read that moratorium?
I most certainly can. A resolution adopting a zoning ordinance instituting an emergency moratorium on solar energy farms. Whereas the Wright County zoning ordinance contains standards for the issuance of a conditional use permit for solar energy farms. And whereas the Office of Planning and Zoning has been accepting a number of applications related to the creation of solar energy farms, and that this has resulting in a number of comments being made by townships, cities, and members of the general public. And whereas the Office of Planning and Zoning and the Wright County Planning Commission are under great development pressure with applications related to solar energy farms. And whereas the Wright County Board of Commissioners has been reviewing the Wright County zoning ordinance with respect to solar energy farms, and changes may be necessary to protect public health, safety, and general welfare. And whereas pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 394.34, the Wright County Board of Commissioners adopted a temporary interim zoning ordinance instituting a moratorium on the processing of any future applications to allow time to classify and regulate uses and related matters and to determine whether a proposed ordinance amendments should be adopted and implemented to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare. And whereas notice was published and a public hearing was conducted on a long-term moratorium not to exceed 6 months. And whereas the Wright County Board of Commissioners finds an emergency zoning ordinance instituting a moratorium prohibiting further solar energy farms is necessary in order to hold discussions and hearings to determine whether a longer-term moratorium zoning ordinance shall be adopted and implemented to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare of the residents of Wright County. Number 2, an emergency exists because based on the recent development pressure as well as the comments received from the community, the townships, and the cities, the Wright County zoning ordinance does not afford the protection needed to ensure that the residents of Wright County are not adversely affected. And 3, it is in the interest of the public health, safety, and general welfare to impose a moratorium for a period not to exceed 6 months. Now therefore be it resolved by the Wright County Board of Commissioners that this resolution adopting an emergency zoning ordinance instituting a 6-month moratorium on approval and acceptance of applications for solar energy farms shall become effective immediately upon its passage and publication and shall remain in effect for a period not to exceed 6 months. And be it further resolved that the Wright County Office of Planning and Zoning is directed to administratively deny any applications during the period in which this interim ordinance is in effect. And finally, be it further resolved that the Wright County Office of Planning and Zoning shall schedule, publish, and notice public hearings as necessary for the purpose of studying and drafting proposed amendments and changes to the Wright County Solar Ordinance, and that a final hearing on any proposed changes or amendments shall be held within 6 months.
And just a bit of comment, and we had people from the industry here today that asked us, of course, not to do this, and they indicated to us some safeguards that we can put in place and things like a case-by-case basis, and you can, deny it and that sort of thing. And the fact of the matter is, right now, I don't believe we can, and I think the rest of the board, in certain cases where it maybe isn't the best place, where it's not ideal, where it could be problematic, we can't probably deny it right now, based upon our ordinance. And furthermore, I think there are some aspects relative to conditions that, plain and simple, Charlie said maybe they don't need to be in the ordinance. I think there's some things that just need to be in the ordinance that aren't. They just need to be spelled out in there, relative to perhaps better with the vegetation. Maybe that's fine, I don't know. I know there is language about vegetation, but certainly relative to the running of the power from this facility to the substation is a good example. The
bonding for the road.
The bonding for the road, land alteration, whether we even, I just think there's some things that got overlooked that plain and simple need to be spelled out. So in no scenario then will anybody, get around them, or can they argue that that's an undue, that the planning commission was stretching when they put that condition on and they don't have the authority to do so. So, we don't have the authority now that we would like to have and need to have.
And those things will be addressed as part of the study and the process.
Exactly.
Trying to figure out, with the help of a number of people and experts, a way to solve this issue.
And after this motion, it seems like there's support up here. I think the next thing we need to do is, because 6 months is a short time frame, perhaps on next week's agenda, we can have the establishment of a committee on there.
I think that's in order, Mr. Chair.
And if anybody in this room that would desire to participate in that, maybe they need to, where would be the best way for them to communicate to their interest in serving? And next week, maybe we just establish a committee.
I think it'd be either to Coordinator Kelly or with Sean Riley's office. I think either of those two offices would be
Why don't we
great
just tell
places.
them one so there's consistency? Which is best?
Sean.
If you desire to serve on this committee, indicate your name and your interest and get something to Sean Riley. You can find him on the county website, his email address. Email fine, Sean? Phone or email, that'd be the way to say you want to be on there.
And Mr. Chair, is the board meeting next week? I know we have 5 meetings this month.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure it's not a canceled one. We do, okay.
We don't meet on the 31st.
Okay.
First is canceled.
Yeah, the last one.
Say, Mr. Salkowski, I want you to know that Harlan Anderson was raving about your work here an hour or two ago. And Harlan is. Yeah. And I should note that Mr. Tom Zins, our predecessor to the bow tie man, is also in the room. Thank you both for your attendance.
Chairman, would you clarify what the next meeting is, sir?
Tuesday.
The next meeting will be next Tuesday, where we're talking about establishing a committee next Tuesday.
Same time, same place, sir?
It'll be here at 9 a.m. I don't know what time that item will be on the agenda. Maybe set a time specific.
No, 9 is fine, Chairman, thank you.
Well, yeah, if you're here at 9, you might just have to, it might not be till 9:30 or something. You can go on the county website and find it.
Yeah, on the county website on Friday afternoon, I'll have some time specifics for
Agenda.
everything on the agenda.
So there is a motion and a second on the resolution that Mr. Kreiser read. Any further discussion by the board? There being no further discussion, roll call vote. Commissioner Burrell?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution carries unanimous. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Back at
Let's
the
see here,
ranch.
12:17, we'll call the meeting back into session. First item of business, resolution designating the week of May 15th through the 21st, 2016 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Was Steve was anybody gonna be here for this in
No, I
particular? Or are we just doing it ourselves?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
Chris?
I sent a message to Marion Larson, but I didn't hear back. So the EMS Week proclamation does that designate the week of May 15th to the 21st, 2016 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas Emergency Medical Services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of the Emergency Medical Services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas the emergency medical services consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, firefighters, educators, administrators, emergency nurses, emergency physicians, and others, and whereas the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills, and whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week now. Therefore, the Wright County Board, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 15th to the 21st, 2016 as Emergency Medical Services Week. With the theme EMS Strong, Call to Care, we encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, with that, I will move the proclamation.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Hewsome, second by Commissioner Potter. Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote. Commissioner Hewsome?
Aye.
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 Aye. Resolution carries unanimous. Let's see here. Resolution authorizing appropriate county officials to sign grant applications. That was relative to the snowmobiles here, wasn't it?
Yep.
Or was there some other stuff also?
Grant and aid.
Grant and aid.
State of Minnesota.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm kind of carrying this one for Mark Mattice, who's not able to be here today. Just authorizing signature on that grant and aid agreement that I believe we've done for many years with the Snowmobile Association Group, so.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Delide. Roll call vote. Commissioner Hewsome?
Aye.
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 Aye. Resolution carries unanimous. No distracted board meetings.
Yeah, I wasn't driving.
First time.
Okay, C, cancel board meeting in August.
5 Tuesdays, I don't have a recommendation other than we'll probably be doing budget committee of the whole meetings towards the latter part of the month, and that might be a good day to have some additional budget meetings if we were to cancel one of the later Tuesdays. Other than that, I don't have a preference.
And Mr. Chair, I would request not to have it be the 16th because I have crime lab that afternoon anyway, so I'll be here.
So you're saying if we cancel the meeting, we'd have more time for budgets, Lee? Is that what you were saying?
Yes, we'll be in budget meetings towards the latter part of the month.
Of course, the only problem with that is then we don't actually get that Tuesday off, but.
True.
Whereas if we have a meeting from 9 to 10:45, then we can just go in the budget after it, so.
I take for granted I'm here every day, so.
And Mr. Chair, I'd look at the August 30th, the last one, that'll make it so, because the next Monday is Labor Day. That'll make it a little easier on staff to make sure they get everything together.
Well, the only thing with that is later in the month, we would probably want to have budgets that day anyhow, so.
Yeah.
If we took the meeting off, I think we'd still be coming in for budgets, so I think we'd almost want to do the 2nd or the 9th if we're not gonna, when will you start the budgets? Probably somewhere around the 10th through the 15th or something like that? 10th through the 20th?
Yeah, I'd anticipate probably that week of August 15th at the earliest.
Okay.
And then into it heavy in the week of the 22nd.
So I'll make a motion that we take the 9th off.
It is Polka Day,
Polka Day, okay.
according to my calendar.
So the 9th is the one that's been thrown up there. Is
I think I'll go to Germany and learn how to polka.
is there a second to the motion to take the
So
9th off?
moved.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Scheduled committee of the whole regarding transfer of nuclear emergency preparedness to the EMS Sheriff's Department.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is the result of several discussions that have been had between Vet Services Nuclear Department and Sheriff's Administration and the Administration Department, and we have a proposal to talk about a little bit of a restructure in this area that we'd like to get moving prior to July 1st, if possible, of 2016. So we'd like to have a committee of the whole with all the commissioners there to discuss. We looked at the week of 24th, 25th, or 26th. Wondering if the 26th at 1:30 would be an option.
How about the 24th at 11?
Yeah, do we have anything going on then?
Could do that.
We have a board meeting that day already.
24th at 11?
Could make it work.
Did you have a problem with it, Lee? that you-
Steve Berg has another assignment he's tied to.
How about the 17th at 11?
I think we have a conflict that day as well.
Okay. So, you think we
Well, how
can make,
about the 25th in the afternoon?
Have tax forfeit auction here at 1 o'clock.
We could go later if it's tax forfeit.
How long does that take?
About an hour.
Do we have to, well, how many people would be here involved, and would we be able to do it in the boardroom?
Could probably meet in the back.
I mean, in the,
Won't be a large number, maybe 10 max.
so we could do it back there. We can't buy anything at the auction anyway.
You can.
I was told, Pat, or Commissioner Potter says I can't.
When we vote on the values, we're all kind of.
Oh, really?
yeah, I don't think we can buy on the,
See, he's been having
You and
his-
I are on the committee, but
I know
the
we
values
can.
get set, but the whole board votes on the structure of it, so they're kind of.
okay, so is the 24th out, Lee, you think?
Steve is committed to something, but if it worked for everybody else, he said he could find a way to get out of it potentially.
On the 24th? What about the 25th?
The
Yeah,
25th
25th is committee day. I mean, is it something that we could do at 11 o'clock?
Possibly.
Well, there's a committee meeting at 11.
There's committee at 11.
1
We do
o'clock
have a
then.
committee, oh, at 11, I thought it was 1.
But I think later later that morning or early afternoon would work
On
Otherwise, if
the
it's
25th?
on the 25th.
We're here for committee also. so-
Right.
The 26th in the morning would work fine with me, or the,
I
Well,
can't
let's
do
do
that.
26? So 25th work for you?
we're talking 1 o'clock?
Yeah.
1 o'clock on the 25th?
We won't be able to watch the auction then.
No.
Okay, is there a motion to establish a committee of the whole on the 25th of May?
So moved.
Motion by Delight, second by Houston. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
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 Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. That worked with you, right, Lynette?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any brief advisory committee, advisory board updates? Chris?
Nope, that's, I'll pass.
Quick, Mr. Chair, last week I attended the conference committee hearing for transportation down at the Capitol. It's supposed to start at 2, it didn't start until 5, I didn't get to go until after 6. And I don't believe they're gonna do much of anything but just lights on bill again. And in owners committee, we, last week, Commissioner Slotsky and I, we went through that with the, another tour of the Public Works building. We did, note a couple things that need to be corrected that are gonna be, like tile and a few different things are gonna be corrected. And the other thing is that's gonna be, we should have comments on is the water reels, the size of the hose is 3/8, which it should be a half or bigger.
You know, let me ask you about that. So it was bid out at 3/8?
I don't think it was spec'd in there, what size. The hose reel wasn't spec'd out, it was just, I think it was one of those assumed it was a 1/2 inch because the pipe coming down is 3/4.
So they're asking for additional funds?
No, we're getting to the bottom of how to get
Okay,
in there. We
all
have
right.
no additional funds, but we wanna get to the answer. You know, we got the 3/4 pipe coming down, why didn't you have the appropriate size? Why is it, and it was just probably one thing overlooked in the spec there, just assume that this is the size hose reel, and for some reason they put 3/8
So
in
the
there.
water that comes out of those ones, Mike, what is that typically used for?
Washing the cars and washing different things, but there's 15 of them total in that whole building.
We have a wash.
So in the wash bay, that's in the wash?
No, these are hose reels.
I know,
in
but,
every,
and I don't know why we have that many.
yeah, it's a.
I don't understand.
3/8 of it?
It was 3/8, and it was supposed to be a half minimum or 3/4 of pipe coming down.
I don't
It's just-
know.
I guess the question is, what are they using it for, and will the 3/8 suffice, or?
Right. So they've got a question to be answered on that, but that's it, Mr. Chair.
Pass, I'm gonna pass, Mark.
Regarding, so you're aware, I am meeting with, Soil and Water on, Thursday, a couple of guys, regarding ditch 31, on that culvert that Woodland Township has asked us to.
Oh, okay.
So, that is in the works, I haven't forgotten it.
I only have, I was at Soil Water last night and just let everybody know the Regal Creek project is all done now. The final payment was made, I think. And we'll probably be expecting Bill well early in here though, because they're taking the water down at what, 1/8 of an inch a week or 1/16 of an inch a week, something? It was, and then we're getting rain. We're rain about 2 inches a week. So I'm thinking Bill's gonna be in there complaining. I'm like, I don't know
talk to
why they
somebody.
don't open that up more, but.
I think because of the downstream, there was promises made with the downstream, and they're gonna live up to those promises.
I said, let's test that Regal Creek project and open her up.
Okay. Anything else come before the board? There being no further business, we are adjourned at 12:28 PM.